Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott as we get ready for Dr. Todd Curtis tonight about airline safety with UFOs and UAP. Airsafe.com is his website. We're going to check him on out momentarily. But first, we need to say hello to each and every one of you. Why? Because that's what we do here. That is what we do. And I'm not seeing a lineup tonight. So we are going to say hello to Mel WD-40 in the gold medal position. He's already lubing us up for tonight's show because you can't talk UFOs without being lubed. Thank you, Mel. Don't forget to give yourself a shot as well. Kitty Caddywhack with a silver medal and kicking off the Super Chat tonight. The Super Chat is a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. And T-Bone taking home a bronze medal. Road Flare, how you doing? Nice to see you. Robert Lamar, thank you for coming on in. Lenda, always a pleasure to have you here as we continue on with our roll call. Hey, JP Six Gunner, how you doing? Welcome to SOR Chat. First time visiting this channel. We'd love to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on in. K17, how you doing? Ray True Colors, welcome to SOR Chat. How you doing? Thank you for joining us. All right, moving on down. We got Magnus for Magnuson. Magnus will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. Kathy Evans, Stephanie Kenny Blankenship, Skip to Malou, Necessary Dialogue. How y'all doing tonight? Missouri Man, thank you for coming on in. Thunderhead and Morwick, how you guys doing? Jaquetta, Erica Stover, nice to see you both here as we continue on with our roll call tonight. And who is next here? JSCO, thank you for joining us. Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, how's the bandana wearing? Let me know if it's a little too tight or not. We'd appreciate it. Bigfoot, Michigan Rob will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. Moving on down, Walter Kochabinski, thanks for coming on in as we continue on with our roll call here. And who do we have next? Integrationing, thank you for joining us. Aussie Boss Tiger, good to have you here. Number 25 in your program tonight, starting at left wing from Stockholm, Sweden, Lars Jansson. Pam Harris, how are you? Nice to have you here. Mickey G, how you doing? Thank you for joining us as we continue on with our roll call here. FU's Eddie, how you doing, buddy? Nice to see you. And Archon, good to have you here. Scrolling on down, we have up next, well, let's see here. It's the Ferret, everybody. Lisa Piper, nice to see you. And who is next here? It's J Truth. How you doing, buddy? Nice to see you. Good crowd tonight. Digger Dog, good to see you. Shogun, thank you for coming on in. Aussie, good to have you here. And let's say hello next to Eva. How are you, Eva? And Karen Alberding, how you doing? Welcome to SOR Chat. We appreciate it. If you're new here, do us a favor. Hit subscribe, ring that bell, give us a thumbs up as well. We are here 7 days a week. 5 days a week. Maybe 7 soon. I don't know. There's a good chance. 5 days a week right now. Right now. That's what I'll say. And yeah, same time, same place, each and every time. We're going to start the radio side. Hold on. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We're getting ready to talk to Dr. Todd Curtis about keeping the airwaves safe from UFOs. Airsafe.com is his website. We're going to talk to him momentarily, but first we're going to finish up with our roll call here on YouTube because, well, that's just what we do around here. We got to get ready. We got to get stretched. We got to get warmed up because it's going to be an exciting show of UFOs tonight. We are also in hour 3 going to address the loss of our good friend, Brent Thomas from the Paranormal Portal podcast. Just a horrible, horrible tragedy. He passed away of a heart attack yesterday, and that one hurts. That one really hurts. So for Brent tonight, I want you all to do me a favor. I want you to throw those horns up. Let's rock.
Are you ready to hear your mystic voice of the night?
It's time to wake up.
He's here. Be quiet. He's ready for you to listen. Let's point our ears to what's that we have in the news. We're together. It's time for Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott.
From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by Caribou Con. Join us right here in the heart of British Columbia for Caribou Con 2026, September 18th through 20th. Get your tickets right now at cariboucon.com. We are getting into the airspace tonight. We're going to go looking for UFOs. We're going to look at airplanes, commercial airlines, military aircraft, and UAP. Dr. Todd Curtis from airsafe.com is here to talk about how dangerous the sky actually is. Then in hour number 3, Swamp Dweller will join us for another creepy story. Josh Rutledge will be filling in for the vacationing Grant Baker on the UFO report in hour 3 as well. So let's get right to it tonight because this is an important one. Dr. Todd Curtis it's his first time on this show, by the way, is one of the aviation industry's most respected safety analysts, bringing decades of experience in risk assessment, accident investigation, and aviation operations. As the founder of airsafe.com and birdstrike.org, he has dedicated his career to improving aviation safety through research, education, and public awareness. In addition to leading the airsafe.com Foundation since 2003, Dr. Curtis has authored numerous publications and contributed to major discussions surrounding airline safety, accident prevention, and emerging aviation challenges, including UFOs and unidentified anomalous phenomena. So guess where we're going with this tonight? We're going to go find out who is actually flying in our friendly skies. Dr. Todd Curtis, welcome to Spaced Out Radio for the first time. How are you?
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for introducing me to your audience.
We're going to have a great show tonight, because for our audience, where they're focused in, they come in 2 categories. Number 1, they've seen something anomalous, and they just don't understand what it is they want to learn. Or B, they have that curiosity about UFOs and unidentified anomalous phenomena, and they want to know what really is going on from a scientific and technical perspective. You come at it from a military background. You've also worked in private industry, in the airline industry for a number of years. I mean, what do you think is going on in the sky above?
Well, what I think is going on is several things. And part of the reason I got into it from my perspective is that what I saw the government, US government doing was looking at UAP, their rebranding of UFO, which I think was a good idea. We'll get into that later. Looking at it from the military and intelligence perspective. In fact, the very definition that's being used across the US government for UAP is one that was developed primarily from that perspective. And as a result, it really didn't capture the full range of UAP as is relevant to civil aviation.
When you look at this subject, like if you go back, say 30 years, 20 years, 15, 10 years, did you ever think, Dr. Todd, that you would be working on radio shows, podcasts about UFOs, little green men, and everything tinfoil? Because I know you and I have that tinfoil colored hair, but I just don't know if you were really prepared to take this deep dive.
The answer is most definitely no, but coincidentally, there was an event 20 years ago that made me go from looking at the time, UFOs as something that was in the culture, and I watched shows on basic cable channels about it, but I didn't take it seriously as an aviation safety issue until the US government decided not to, in a very obvious way. And many of the audience would know that in 2006, there was an event over a terminal at Chicago's O'Hare Airport where something was seen floating above the terminal. Should not have been there. Didn't register with FAA, didn't have a transponder, wasn't in contact with the ground or people in the sky. Seen by a variety of people on the ground and in aircraft, although not in the control towers, it turns out, because of the angle that it was hanging out, and then punches through the clouds, leaves a hole, visible hole through the clouds. What was the government's response? Well, when I read the story, I thought, my God, this is outrageous. They should do something. They didn't. Nothing. Not FAA, not TSA, not FBI, not NSA, not DOD, not the White House. All the 3 and 4 letter agencies you can think of, there was nothing official, even a word saying, we don't know what happened. I thought that's not acceptable. You know, if you were a person or a group intent on doing harm, you'd look at that situation and say, look, if we can make what we're flying look like a UFO, we can go wherever we want. No one's going to touch us. So that got me to thinking, what am I going to do about it? At the time, I had my podcast, actually my earliest podcast, and my website was out for about 10 years at that point. I'd published a book on aviation safety. I showed up occasionally on TV to talk about aviation safety related things, but never dealing with this side of aviation. And I thought, okay, I can do what I do best. I can write stuff, I can put it on the internet. And that's where it started at first. A few articles here and there on my website, but I didn't really go out and try and interview people or try to get on TV or radio about it. Then, 2010, Leslie Kean writes her book about UFOs in general, and I can't do the entire title, I keep forgetting it, but this was my kind of book. She was an investigative reporter, looked at this from the perspective of official government documents and high-level individuals, general-level officers, pilots, government officials, some of whom had eyewitness testimony. And in a lot of cases, there was official documentation. I thought, if I were to address this, this is the direction I would go. But then again, there was really no way to go with that because there was no industry focus on that. There was no push, military or civilian aviation, to talk about this subject. So I kept doing my thing. And the first real break I had was in 2013. After pestering Leslie Kean a whole lot, she actually came on my podcast. We had a lovely conversation. And I thought, this is going to be the high water mark of me dealing with this because, hey, I got to talk to Leslie Kean, got her on the podcast. It's still on YouTube somewhere. You can find it. And it pretty much stayed that way until I actually got to the point where I went in front of a camera and talked about it. 2 years later, because of my other work I've been doing in shows like air disasters and shows of that ilk and showing up on TV, I got a call one day from a Discovery Channel series that wanted to do an episode on UFOs and airliners. And, I said yes, showed up in Toronto, sitting down with the producers. We're going through what we're going to talk about. 3 very well documented cases, fairly famous cases from the previous decade or so. But I had one request of the producers. When I'm on camera, when you're recording me, can I not say UFO at any point? So I was not quite ready to embrace it fully because I thought somebody's going to take a clip of me saying UFO under any circumstance and put it places and try to embarrass me. That's what I was thinking at the time. Let's just say that in the 11 years since, I've moved beyond that. But it also reflects what I think the whole industry felt about this subject. For decades, it was something you didn't discuss in a serious way, not casually at work, and definitely not if you saw something, because that could mean being grounded, being laughed at, being denied promotions. You didn't have to have a class on this. It was like obvious to anybody walking around that you don't do that kind of thing. I was in the Air Force early in my career, stationed at Edwards, heard a few, tales about things that might have happened around the base, but it was just that, legendary things that may or may not have happened. After I left Edwards, I heard about things like Gordon Cooper when he was a test pilot there, reviewing some film that some technicians had taken of something landing on the lake bed. But as far as, if I'd seen something when I was at work, hanging around the F-16 program where I was, or talking with the pilots, I wouldn't share it with them. It's like, I'm a young lieutenant trying to move up in the Air Force hierarchy. Talking about that kind of subject was not going to be healthy for my career. But I digress. Let's get back to the future. After 2015, the next big thing that happened, we all read it, Leslie Kean and her New York Times article that she co-wrote. By the way, Leslie turns up 3 times in my journey to where I am today. One in 2010, second time in 2013 when I interviewed her, third time when she basically opened the eyes of the entire world. So thanks to Leslie for the hard work you've done. Now, why am I hardcore in aviation safety right now? Let's fast forward, 2021. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the ODNI, the cabinet official technically over the CIA and NSA and all the other intelligence communities, but I'm not even going to go into any detail about what I think about the CIA's ability to, how should I say, ignore higher level orders. But anyhow, they had a preliminary report on UAP where they said in plain language, UAP was a national security issue and a potential aviation safety issue. That was a trigger for me. This is being taken seriously in writing in a document that's going to be taken seriously by various areas of aviation. And that's when I went into overdrive thinking, what am I going to do now? So the current podcast I'm on called Flight Safety Detectives, which is one that's run by myself and a former NTSB board member, John Goldie, and a former investigator, Greg Fife, I sort of like egged them on saying, hey, we should talk about this report. So we did something on that. That was 2021. We've since done about 10 different shows on various aspects of UAP and aviation safety. But once I went into it from that direction, I started saying, okay, how should this be played within the aviation safety community, which I've been a part of for decades? And one of the key things about aviation, anyone who's involved in aviation knows this, very regulated, very cut and dried in many cases, and there are processes in place to address issues, whether it be, fireproofing of seats, or how do you determine if something is a risk so high that you have to change things, either in operations, design, manufacture, etc. Well, there was no process like that for risk involving UAP. As you stated before, my first, one of my websites was birdstrike.org. And this is getting to a bit of history involving Canadians. Back in 1995, there was an accident at Elmendorf where an E-3 AWACS ran into a flock of geese. All the crew members died, including 3 Canadian Forces personnel. And I happened to be at Boeing at the time and was called up there to help investigate that because I was a bird strike focal and bird hazard focal. And that set me on a path that actually put me in touch with my now partner on Flight Safety Detectives, John Golia, he was on board at the time. He called a meeting of experts across the industry talking about bird hazards to aviation. And that got me into the community of bird hazard experts in the US, Canada, and Europe. And after hanging out for a while, I came to the conclusion that we know what the problem is. We're the insiders. We know the ins and outs. We know the top 10 questions, but nobody else does. If we're going to get any kind of movement, how do we inform the rest of the aviation community to the point that they take action before people get killed? And one of the things I told them was like, look, I'm not the greatest marketer in the world, but I have a website about aviation safety. I have no fame or fortune. I'm not the head of any company, but I get like thousands of people showing up. I show up on TV. I'll use the skills, what few skills I had from building that customer base, and build you something smaller scale where we have all the basic stuff about bird strike in one place. If anything happens, people will start using the early search engines and looking for bird strike stuff. I want them to find us, not somebody else down the road. And the site's still there. It was put up in 1999. So let me do some math here. It's been up for 27 years.
27 years, yes.
And it's being run by a nonprofit, one of the bird strike community organizations, which it was designed to do. But it really didn't earn its keep for 10 years. 2009, there was a little event in New York City involving a A320 and a flock of birds and some guy named Sully. That was the mother of all bird strike events that we said was going to happen one day, when the entire world will have its attention on this subject, and we want them to come to us, not to somebody else. So fast forward to now, I look at UAP as a similar thing. There is a cadre of people, both inside and outside the industry, who know all manner of things about this subject, and especially people inside the industry who understand how this could be a safety problem, even if it doesn't involve a physical object. Heck, even if it involves something that's not technically UAP. Because a whole lot of stuff gets misidentified all the time. You think it's a solid object, but in fact it's a balloon, et cetera, et cetera. If you react to something in a way that puts your aircraft in danger, that makes this hazard worth talking about. So if there is a way to just systematically go through all the kinds of events that happen, and like we do with every other kind of risk, understand it from a technological point of view, understand it from a procedural point of view. If X happens, what should the response be of a pilot or ground crew or whatever? If you're following procedures, in most cases, even if you don't know what that X is, you'll get out of a situation. I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say you and I are flying a small airplane. We both have 40, 50 hours under our belts, so we know just enough to be dangerous. And we don't know that much about the ins and outs of flying, but we were taught something by our instructors early on. If you're ever coming head on to somebody, turn right. You think, that's simple. It is. Because if you and I are both coming at each other and we both turn right, we're going to avoid each other. But if we didn't have a plan burned into our heads ahead of time, we might go left, right, up, or down. But the standard procedure is make a right turn. Now, I've only done that once in all the years I've been flying. It was about the time when I had maybe 50 or 60 hours. I was at Edwards as an Air Force officer. I was flying in the Aero Club, little Cessna that was old and beat up, but I was the king of the skies when I was in that little Cessna. So I make a turn one day, just after leaving the base. I thought it was about 2 miles further on. I was wrong. I make the turn. I'm coming nose to nose with the P-3 Orion, 4-engine turboprop Navy plane hunting submarines. My first thought was, how did that P-3 get there? My immediate second thought was turn right. I turned right. I got yelled at by the other pilot. Didn't get written up or anything. So, whew. But I've been telling that story for 40 plus years. And here's how it relates to UAP. Let's say it's 1984. That same event happens, but instead of a P-3 Orion, it is something straight out of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I still make my right turn. The whatchamacallit does whatever it does. We both live to fly another day, but I would have never talked about it. I would have zipped it tight and kept it tight for 30, 40 years until maybe the last couple of years when All sorts of things are coming out. So you tell me, how is that going to affect you as a pilot if you held something secret from your wife, your kids, your coworkers, to the point that no matter how bothered you are by it, no matter how scared you were by it, admitting that publicly would be the end of your career? Now, 40 years ago, that was the case. Now, I would hope it's not the case, but the reality is, in too much of the world, it is still the case. Now, we're kind of spoiled here in the US and Canada. We hear about it all the time.
Right.
It's being talked about on high levels of government. Serious people say things like sentient plasmoid beings, which David Grush did the other day. And
Yes.
it would have been weird a year ago, but it's like, okay, what's next? But in too much of the world, they meaning people inside the industry, can't have an honest conversation with their colleagues or with themselves about this subject. Now, where does the US and Canada come in? Real simple. US and Canada have an outsized influence on aviation around the world, including that France, Germany, Great Britain, Japan, Australia. If those usual suspects get behind some idea, be it a new way of dealing with problems, being a new way of organizing, whatever the case may be in aviation, it has a very good chance of becoming an international standard. So, where's your role in all this? We're talking about this. There are people out there who have nothing to do with aviation, who are hearing a little bit about aviation thinking, oh, okay, so maybe, all this stuff about UAP, it's not just, stuff for the movies and whatnot. Maybe there's some serious stuff that should be dealt with. Even if I don't believe it, it's not a question of belief. I mean, whether you believe in a goose or not, if one hits your windshield, you're going to have a very bad day. So whether you think geese should be there or not, whether you think people should feed them or not, the reality is geese are a potential issue with aviation. And if you encounter them, either flying or on the ground, there are certain ways you should deal with them. Well, UAP are the new geese as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and that brings up an important question with only 2 minutes to go before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Dr. Todd Curtis is our guest tonight from airsafe.com. Is there a difference between UAP and UFO? The UFO community tends to blend it all together, but it sounds like if geese can be UAP, if a balloon can be UAP, if a drone can be UAP, if, an eagle could be UAP, what are we actually looking for here?
Well, all those things can be UAP if they're unidentified. The moment they become identified positively, they move from the UAP category to the goose category or the balloon category or whatever. But the first response, when you see something, you can't identify it. It doesn't really matter what it ultimately is. The question is, what are you going to do right now to keep yourself safe?
I get that. I can understand and appreciate that, but is it that much of a problem right now?
The answer is, my honest answer is, I don't know. And I don't know because it hasn't been systematically tracked or reported or dealt with or discussed. Sure, with the existence of things you can't identify, that's been around for a long time. What has not existed was a tried and true, rote way of dealing with it if it happens. If you hear about it or see it, do you report it or not report it? In the next segment, I can get into something with the air traffic controllers in the United States where they went through a sea change in official policy just in the past year when it comes to this whole subject.
Definitely, we could get into that. And I'm looking forward to getting into so much more with you tonight because this topic actually really intrigues me. From birthday balloons to, like you said, geese being a problem. If it's unidentified, it's part of the phenomena. That's what we're looking for. Objects in the sky we cannot figure out. Dr. Todd Curtis is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. If you want to find his incredible work, just pop by his website, airsafe.com. The website, once again, airsafe.com. Make sure you check it on out. We'd really appreciate you sticking around for the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio right around the break.
So, do we have the internet-only audience right now?
It's just the internet only audience right now. Yes.
Very good. Let me first shameless self-promotion.
You
I
do
wrote
it.
this book a quarter century ago because it was basically my how-to guide for doing my job at Boeing. I got real tired of doing analyses about things. It's like, okay, Todd, you're the stat guy here. Analyze this. It's like, okay, is there a standard procedure for it? No, we all learn by doing. It's like on-the-job training, which means it was a mishmash of people doing stuff that made no sense. So instead of getting mad about why should somebody else do something about it, I said, let me write the book on the subject. Now, how did that work in my website? I applied the same standard for things that I considered a hazard. And one day, there was a news report of she was a lawyer, an attorney on CNN, one of these talking head experts. She had
Yep.
something in her check bag. TSA opens it. They put that standard boilerplate letter saying, we're TSA, we opened your bag. Except it was, let's just say, a personal pleasure device. And they wrote, get your freak on, girl, on top of that. It became a big story. Guy got fired. I thought, ha, ha, ha. And I thought, this is internet gold. I can put TSA and sex toy in the same headline legitimately, but I'm not going to make a joke out of this. What's the risk here? And I looked at this from the point of view of there are rules for the TSA, what it is and is not allowed. There are rules of decorum as to what they can or can't do to you, and embarrassing you like that was definitely against the rules. But beyond that, what if you're a passenger and you want to carry something like that in your bag? What's the practical advice I can give you? For example, you're changing planes in Toronto, probably not a problem. You're changing planes in Tehran, doesn't matter if it's legal where you came from or where you're going. Tehran might have something to say to you. So that was a ha-ha funny subject, which I immediately put into how do I put this in the realm of aviation risk reduction? So UAP
Wow.
is that same sort of attitude.
That's impressive. Most people wouldn't think about that.
And now we can discuss putting UAP and sex toy in the same headline.
We have about 3 minutes to go here, or we have to go to break here or come back from break. Wilford Brimley, how you doing? How's the diabetes? Let us know. Let's see. Jewel of the Rock listening in on X. Welcome. We appreciate you. Al Garay over on Twitch. Great to have you here. About time you got back from the gym. Hillbilly Herb, nice to see you as we continue on. Whoopoo, how you doing? Nice to have you here. And I think we're all caught up there. Yes, for those of you who are haven't heard the news, we lost a good friend of this show yesterday. Brent Thomas from the Paranormal Portal podcast had a heart attack and passed away. It's a big blow. We're going to get more into that in hour number 3. We're going to lead off with that in hour 3 because I want to be able to give that some time and just not have a time limit on it because I kind of like the guy. And yeah, we'll get into that. I've done enough crying in the last 24 hours. Jeff Steve Garvey, he'll hit a home run for you. How you doing, buddy? Nice to see you. And we're doing good, guys. We're doing good. We'll get to a lot more. Have you ever met Jim Goodall?
I have not.
Oh, you got to meet Jim Goodall. He's part of the U.S. Aviation Hall of Fame.
I was at the presentation, U.S. Aviation Hall of Fame last year, and I probably met him, but there were a lot of people there that night I met.
He's a wild man. He's 81 years old and still drives his Corvette proudly at 100 and some miles an hour, you know. But he's the first civilian to ever take a picture of the F-117 Nighthawk.
Cool.
And Ben Rich, who used to run Skunk Works, was a good friend of Jim's. And that's pretty cool. Karen Alberding, how you doing? Welcome. East Coast Turnaround on X, nice to see you. And we got about 35 seconds. So cool. Blending my two favorite things ever, aviation and airplanes and UFOs. Oh, fantastic. This makes Dave happy tonight. When I go third person, I'm always like so giddy and happy. So thank you for that, Doc. Appreciate that. I'm going to just put your mic on mute here for a second. Thank you to Kitty Catty Whack. Thank you to Erica. Thank you to Walter. And thank you to T-Bone, my man, for the super chats. Let's get into the second half hour right now. Here is the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We got an incredible guest tonight, Dr. Todd Curtis from airsafe.com. Are the skies safe to fly with all these UFOs and UAP around? We'll get into that momentarily. But first, we want to remind all of you that if you miss portions of this show or others, always check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Dr. Todd Curtis is here from a beautiful project. I love it. Airsafe.com, where we're going to get into right now whether or not it is safe to fly in the sky. And this isn't about fear-mongering. This is about pilots having close encounters. Dr. Todd, tell us how it works.
With respect to UAP and aviation, unfortunately, it hasn't worked for a long time. And as I hinted before the break, the change is slow. And it's sometimes kind of jarring and pleasantly so. And I'll give you an example. There are actual rules for FAA for their air traffic controllers to respond to certain situations. And for several years, there was written instruction saying that if a pilot reported a UFO, they could give the pilot two pieces of advice. A, report it to a civilian UFO agency, or B, contact local law enforcement. Now, both of those are basically passing the buck because a civilian UFO agency has no official connection to the government. So the opportunity to learn from extraordinary events gets lost. And for law enforcement, in the US and elsewhere, the skies are handled by one level of law enforcement, and the ground is by hundreds of levels of law enforcement. So if I were to see something in flying my Cessna around a couple of years ago and try to figure out what law enforcement entity was beneath where that unknown was, I'd have a problem. And plus, if I called them, they would probably curse me out and hang up in my face. But there was a sea change. Late last year, they had a change of that specific policy saying there are 5 things that if somebody has a report, there are 5 things you should look for and report one or more of those 5 things to a specific office in the FAA. So they went from passing the buck to accepting that this is a reality and put it over in this office over here. Now, it's not open to the public, or at least not easily accessible, so I don't know what data is there. But the fact that they went from hands off to we want your data, without making a fuss about it, I happened to be stumbling across this obscure area of regulation and saw they had a change. I thought, this is amazing. And fast forward to a whole different thing. Remember that scene in Close Encounters? Second scene or so in the movie where the air traffic controllers were talking to the pilots about what was happening. I thought, what if I took the new rules that the FAA just had, looked at that scene in detail, and asked the question, would this scene have enough information to fill this report? And I had to listen to the scene about 20 times, wrote up a transcript of the conversation as though it were an NTSB transcript, just to see what everybody was saying. And the short answer is yes. All 5 of the things we were looking for could have been reported in that scene in Close Encounters. But the brilliance of that scene, it was shot literally 50 years ago using former air traffic controllers as some of the actors. But the way it was written, you had the conversation between the controller and the pilots, and you had a bunch of controllers behind the main controller talking amongst themselves, trying to figure out what it is. It's as though he was recreating the kind of conversation that would be happening in someone's head if they're in the middle of this. Whether you're the pilot or the controller, you're trying to do your job and at the same time thinking, holy crap, what is this? Is it this? Is it that? Could it be a spaceship? Could it be SR-71? And this confused thing is going on in your head as you're trying to deal with the situation at the same time.
Right.
And as the case with most aviation situations, high stress situations happen, the professionalism kicks in, but the questions remain.
Those questions, what are they? Like for us who are laymen in this field where, the closest we come to an airline is flying on it. What are the questions that need to be asked from a more professional perspective?
The question I ask is quite simple. Does this thing, the encounter or whatever it is that involves a purported UAP, does it represent a hazard? And does a hazard have the potential to have an outcome that could have a negative effect on people? Loss of the aircraft, damage, injury, etc. Now, some hazards are less potentially dangerous than others. You're cruising along at 35,000 feet and you see something at what you think is 100,000 feet running figure eights all over the place. That's not a typical aircraft. In fact, that's not an aircraft that has been acknowledged to exist. It may not be an aircraft that could be possibly built, but is it a threat to you? You're at 35,000. It's at 50 to 100,000. The biggest hazard is it's a distraction. Will it keep you from doing your job? Will you miss a call out? Will you go to the wrong altitude because you're staring out the window at this thing and not staring at your instrument panel? Now, take, for instance, that same thing, instead of being 20,000 feet above you, happens to be in a close formation around your aircraft as you're cruising along. And they're not just one of them, they're four of them for an hour, coming as close as 1,000 feet away from you, staying just out of reach, but definitely in a place they shouldn't be. Because at that altitude, there are a whole bunch of regulations that dictate what every aircraft there should be equipped with, how they should be communicating with others. They should have permission to do so from the required air traffic control authority. And they definitely should not be flying in formation with another aircraft unless that other aircraft was in on this particular formation. There's a hazard there. There's a potential for midair collision. Heck, those four things around the airliner could run into each other, or they can run into the airliner. And you're there flying an airliner full of passengers. Your only thought is this a danger to me? What should we do to deal with this situation? By the way, that's the actual documented event that was a focus of a paper I presented last week at the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics convention down in San Diego, which, to their credit, we had a couple of folks from the group I'm working with who presented papers about UAPs and aviation, and mine was one of them.
Wow. Let me ask you, though, how dangerous is it right there? Is this mainly for commercial airlines? Is it military? Is it private pilots? Or is it happening to everybody out there who's in the air behind the propeller or behind the jet engines?
It's a hazard to anyone who's flying. Now, there has been documented cases of military pilots coming front and center with this. Well, heavily going back to World War II with the whole Foo Fighter phenomenon. And more recently, the Tic Tac, that was the focus of the revelations that Leslie Kane wrote about in 2017, and the pilots who were there experiencing them. And after that started coming out, you started hearing about these military pilots off the East Coast and West Coast of the United States especially, having these things happen on a regular basis, having unknown flying objects, fairly small, cutting right between two Navy fighters on maneuvers, splitting their formation in two. That takes pretty precise flying, coming head on at two jets coming at you at 300 or 400 knots, and you're splitting right between them, and those two jets are only about 100 feet apart. That was reported. That was seen. You don't have to be an expert to realize that's a potential problem. Now, has it ever resulted, let's say, in a midair collision that killed everyone on board? To my knowledge, no. However, if there were midair collision with a UAP and there are no survivors, how would we know? Aircraft, not even airliners, are equipped with 360 all aspect radio and radar and whatnot recordings happening all the time where you can recreate the airspace around every moment of flight. That information simply doesn't exist. And hey, what about this situation? Let's say you and I are airline pilots. We're sitting in the front of the aircraft, and behind us, out of our sight, there's all kinds of things happening. It happens to be a cargo flight, so there are no passengers. We could be completely unaware that there's like a half dozen things dancing around us as we're flying to our destination. I have looked through a bunch, I wouldn't say a bunch, thousands of incident and accident reports over the last few decades. There's only one I've come across where you can even argue that there might be an unknown something that happened there. And Leslie Kane actually pointed out in her 2010 book. My colleague and I looked again at that, and here's the basic situation. Cargo plane's taking off, it's night, low visibility, and it's very likely the pilot got disoriented, lost control, and crashed in a swamp. Nothing spectacular there. No UAPs in the sense of physical objects outside of the aircraft. However, in the wreckage, there was some red striped whatever on all sorts of interior pieces of the airplane. Had nothing to do with any cargo. It was chemically analyzed by 2 different laboratories. There was no combination of paints that was related to anything in the cargo or in aviation that they can think of. And it just didn't make sense that this aircraft that lost control and crashed had this strange, almost deliberate, painting of streaks of red something or another all through the aircraft. Now, was that from a UAP? I don't know. But it's unidentified. It's definitely anomalous because my colleague who'd seen many accident reports or investigated them himself said, hey, the years he was in industry, years he was at NTSB, he never saw something like this on the interior of the aircraft afterwards. So at the end of our analysis, we said, yeah, this constitutes a UAP. It's an unknown effect that has may have had some effect on the aircraft.
A lot of people, including myself, will sit here and say, without sounding rude, Dr. Todd, this may sound like a little bit of fear mongering. I mean, flights and flying has been noted as the safest way to travel for decades.
Well, you just made me flash back to around 1997, shortly after I started my website. I got 2 emails within the space of a few days. One of them said I was a fearmonger, and another one said I was an apologist for the airlines. And I thought, I can't be both at the same time. So I stopped listening to what people thought I was. Now, is it fear-mongering? Look, I'll admit, this is a nightmare sort of situation. All the kind of ways that planes can crash. No one wants to think about that when they're flying, not even me. And the job of people in aviation safety, and this could be folks who are safety engineers like myself, mechanics on the line, flight attendants who have their role primarily in safety. The reason they exist is to not serve the passengers, but to be part of the team that keeps that airplane safe. Hey, when things go wrong and they tell you to evacuate off the slides, it's not coffee, tea, or me. It's like, get your butt out of here. But I digress. We look at these situations, analyze them, sometimes for days or weeks, so that we can figure out how to keep it from happening again and figure out what made it happen in the first place. Is it fear-mongering? Depends on how you want to play this out in public. You can go online right now and find hundreds of people out there who have, let's just say, their own way of looking at aviation accidents. Many of them are quite responsible. Some of them are quite ridiculous. Are they fear-mongering or are they just clickbaiting? It's up for them to decide.
I guess what I'm saying is we've been battling geese for years. We've been battling balloons for years. I'm sure you see these people launch dozens of balloons on a memorial for someone who's passed. That gets caught up in somebody's propeller or gets sucked into a jet engine. That can do a lot of damage. As far as has a UFO ever taken down an aircraft, or do we know of one that may have?
I'm not aware of any. I'm not aware of I'm not aware of any civilian entities where that happened. Now, there are stories out there, for example, some of the release files from after the Soviet Union was dissolved, where George Knapp, I think, was famous for having gotten out a whole bunch of secret documents, some of which said, hey, we used to have orders to go up there and shoot them down. One of them shot us down, and we said, we're not going to do that anymore. And even in the U.S., there's stories not corroborated by the U.S. government or the Canadian government that in the past that there might have been a more, let's just say, offensive way of approaching UFOs if they saw something on their radar. By the way, speaking of U.S. and Canada, NORAD, Joint U.S.-Canada Organization, for 60 years, they never fired a single shot at anything. And in a week and a half, maybe a week's time, they shot down or shot at 3 different things. Haven't done it since. But the 3 things they shot at were all UAP.
But you see, okay, you bring up a good example here, and I appreciate you bringing this up. I agree, they are UAP. However, it's very tough for the public not to get confused when we see the video of the Lake Huron incident of the balloon. We don't know if it was a Chinese balloon or there was some story that it may have been a college weather testing balloon, or a physics balloon or whatever it may be. I understand what you're saying by calling that a UAP, but where the public gets upset is when the government puts that video out. The people are wanting UFOs. They're watching F-16s blow up a hot air balloon.
That gets into, there's so much to unpack with what's the motivation of the government with releasing that video, but not the potentially thousands of videos they've had for the past 60, 70 years. I don't know, but it is something that does confuse the public. At the time the missile was fired, it was considered a threat. Whether it's known or unknown, it was acting in such a way, and there was a set of rules of engagement, they fired the missile. Now, after the fact, I believe the consensus is it was not something extraordinary with respect to aviation. It was probably a balloon. And is that a game that's being played by certain people in government to try and get the public to think, this isn't serious at all, I shouldn't take this seriously? I don't know, because I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But I do have one beef with the 3 releases that have happened from the U.S. government in the last month or two. The video ones, it's like they redact all the information, all the airspeed, altitude, location. They give you the most general pieces of information, somewhere in the Indo-Pacific theater of operations. They say, oh, we're releasing these videos to the public so the public can come to their own conclusions. Well, if you tie your hands behind your back, you don't have any altitude, airspeed, you don't have any context, you don't have any after-action reports or analysis that experts may have done about this. All you have is a short video that shows something that you really can't describe. By the way, the documentary information that's been released in these releases, I find far more informative than any of the videos they've released.
Do you find anything convincing?
No, not without corroboration. And corroboration might be the information they didn't release. Corroboration could be show us something that is just absolutely, beyond your capability of understanding, and admit that you don't know what it is, show it no matter how outrageous it is, and then ask the public with their hands on all the available data to come to their own conclusion.
But the public right now seems, especially after this latest tranche of evidence, really don't seem to be, in favor of what's going on. That's for sure.
Well, I can't blame the public. One of the antics, and I call it that the U.S. government did in the last few weeks is they were touting, yes, we're going to have this aliens.gov website. Oh, the truth will be out there and we'll tell you everything. And of course, it was something to deal with the government's program about getting out undocumented people. Now, there are 2 legitimate policy initiatives. One, to release information dealing with the UAP, and another, enforcing the laws about who can or can't be in the U.S. Now, whether you agree or disagree with either way the policies are being executed, well, I'm not going to say which one I agree with more, but what I definitely disagree with is don't mix the two together. Don't try and benefit, well, take the billion views of the released information and sort of say, hey, let's leverage this. Let's come out with an alien.gov website where we're really trying to get eyeballs over about our policy about people who are here illegally. Look, that's a legitimate thing over there. Keep it over there. This is a legitimate thing over here. Keep it over here. Don't mix the two.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm still pissed off about it. I'm really upset about that. I know a lot of people in the UFO community are still quite upset about the aliens.gov website, which, I remember when the first tranche came out, we were all sitting around like, this doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't they put this on aliens.gov? And then boom, we get all kind of punched in the stomach with that. But that is a prime example of whether or not the government is actually taking this story seriously. Go ahead.
I'll say this about the government. Having been a part of it myself, being a Air Force officer for several years, and working with civilian and military people before and after that part of my career, it's a large bureaucracy. It has hundreds of thousands, if you include the military, millions of people involved in doing things all over the world, sometimes at cross purposes to one another. Now, there's a reason why when I was in the military, the nickname for the Pentagon was the five-sided funny farm, because things happen within there bureaucratically that make no sense from the outside, but make perfect sense in the context of being in the military-industrial complex. For example, there's only a certain pot of money out there to be divvied up. Who's going to be better at getting the money? What are you going to do to make sure that this service gets less money and your service gets more? What tricks are you willing to pull to make that happen? Now, within the White House, I'm speculating here, I'm sure there was a bunch of folks who were on the policy side dealing with illegal immigration saying, hey, we have the authority to do some things that could be, stupid internet tricks. Let's get control of the aliens.gov website before these other guys do, and let's use it to push our agenda. Is this a government conspiracy? Is it incompetence? Is it people being people? Is it all of the above? I don't know. But I don't think it was a consistent conspiracy on the top to pull a fast one on the public by doing this aliens.gov thing. It wasn't that high level. It wasn't that intelligently thought out. And it was definitely ham-handedly executed, in my opinion.
We have about 90 seconds to go before we have to go to break at the top of the hour. Dr. Todd Curtis from airsafe.com is our guest tonight on the show. At some point, we have to start combining the information with the results. I understand, and maybe as an outsider, because I'm in Canada, you're in the United States. In Canada, we don't really take things as threat narratives because, we think everybody, including the aliens, likes us, and we're a hodgepodge of people here, which I think is fantastic. So I'm just curious, at some point, don't the American people and I need about a 40-second answer. You can carry it over to the next hour if you want, but don't the American people need a break from always wondering what's out to get them?
They need a break, but unfortunately, the world as it is, I'm not going to blame technology. 100 years ago, was there a whole bunch of things that were weighing on the American public's mind about threats out there that they didn't need to be worried about, but they were forced to be worried about? Yes. Those things have changed. Is it a human nature thing, or is it a government conspiracy thing that's unique to this time and place? I think the former is more likely than the latter.
All right, my friend, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because I can tell you've done this once or twice because you know when it's coming close to break time and you know where to put that period after your sentence. And as a radio show host, I can tell you, I applaud you for that. I really do applaud you. Spaced Out Radio's hour number 2 continues right after this. Dr. Todd Curtis from airsafe.com. Are the skies above safe to fly in? We'll be right back. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
Our merch is Bigfoot approved. We have t-shirts, we have mugs, we have hoodies, we have socks, we have hats, we have stickers, and so much more. Whatever you're looking for, we have you covered. Why just be a fan of the paranormal when you can buy Spaced Out Radio merch and look the part? Our merch ain't ugly, folks. Check out the Spaced Out Radio store. Find the link in the description below.
Lurking within the forested region of the 108-mile ranch, where the worlds of the normal and paranormal collide. CaribouCon is waiting for you, bringing together a panel of renowned experts in the paranormal, cryptid research, and UFO phenomena fields. Get ready for a spine-tingling weekend in the heart of British Columbia. Enjoy fascinating discussions, presentations, tours of local haunted areas, and skywatching. Learn from investigators, authors, and enthusiasts who explore everything from ghost hunting techniques to sightings of Sasquatch and beyond. Whether you're a seasoned paranormal researcher or just love a good spooky story, this is your chance to connect with fellow enthusiasts in one of BC's most mysterious areas. Tickets are on sale now. Grab yours before they're gone. Visit cariboucon.com for details, tickets, and updates.
Are you ready to dive into the weird and wonderful world of cryptids, cartoons, and chaos? Meet Dirty Filth, Spaced Out Radio's resident cartoonist and master of the mysterious. Every Saturday at 2 p.m. Pacific, join him live on the Spaced Out Radio YouTube channel for Cryptid Cartoons with Dirty Filth, a hilarious hour where he sketches bizarre beasts, shares mind-bending stories, and battles his mischievous cats. Whether you're a UFO enthusiast, paranormal fan, or just love quirky art, Dirty Filth filters the universe through his unique lens, creating cartoons that capture the strange, dark, and supernatural. Follow Dirty Filth on X at Filth1 or Facebook at Dear Filth for more filthy fun. Find his link in the description below.
Spaced Out Radio wants to hear from you. We love our community, and your voice truly matters. Drop a comment after every show and let us know what you thought. Agree with our guests? Tell us why. Disagree? We want to hear that too. We read every single comment. Jump into the live chat during the broadcast and be part of the conversation in real time. Got a killer topic idea? Your suggestions help shape the show. And if you want to take it even further, join our Patreon for bonus content and direct feedback opportunities with Dave and the team. This is your show as much as it is ours. Whether you're a longtime listener or brand new, we want your thoughts, your questions, and your ideas. And let's keep building this incredible community together. Spaced Out Radio, where the conversation never ends. What are you waiting for? We're listening.
with 5 explorable Gold Rush era buildings said to be home to spirits of a time forgotten. The 108-mile heritage site in the heart of BC's Caribou region offers a unique opportunity for thrill seekers and history buffs. For an evening of historical fun, step into our guided ghost tours, where spine-chilling stories of Gold Rush legends and unexplained encounters come alive. For those craving even more, inquire with us about conducting a hands-on paranormal investigation of your own. And if you're truly brave, book our haunted sleepovers. Spend the night at our B&B inside the McNeil House to truly experience this historical landmark and its ghostly secrets firsthand. For booking or inquiries, go to haunted108.com.
All right, we're coming back in 30 seconds with Dr. Todd Curtis. I want to say thank you to T-Bone, Walter, Erica, and Kitty for the super chats tonight. We greatly appreciate your love and support, and we're having a good time tonight. So thank you very much for tuning us in. Mr. Cowley, how you doing? Welcome. And don't forget, if you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. It helps with our algorithms on YouTube. Here we go, everybody. We are into the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We appreciate you tuning us on in for Dr. Todd Curtis. Airsafe.com is his website. And I want to remind all of you that this is a good place to be each and every night, because we are here Monday through Friday for your listening entertainment. Hi to all of you listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. You could follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Babbledom. Babbledom is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. All right, let's bring in our guest tonight. We have Dr. Todd Curtis. He is the leader, the creator of airsafe.com. And are the skies above us safe? Do we have to be worried about getting in some sort of accident? Are pilots in danger? These are all questions we're going to get to here momentarily. Dr. Todd, welcome back to the show.
Thanks again for having me.
This has been great so far and educational as well. Are people listening, though, Todd? Are people within the government paying attention? Are people with the airline industry paying attention to this issue of UFOs/UAP flying in the sky close to any type of pilot who's flying?
People are listening, but I don't think at this point enough people have listened and decided to take action, which brings me to what I think the most important challenge being faced by the aviation safety community. It's not a knowledge challenge. We know the tools and techniques to identify and reduce risk. It's not a money challenge because it's not a moonshot program. We don't need to have $100 billion to make this happen. It is a marketing challenge. And that marketing challenge is getting people not to believe that UAPs exist, but to believe that UAPs can and should be treated as a legitimate aviation safety issue. And should that decision be made, the whole bunch of things cascade in a direction that will actually reduce risk. And by the way, I've been remiss in that we've been talking about safety and risk. There's a difference between the two. Risk is something you can measure. Risk is something that you can set up a bunch of rules, and you might not agree with the rules, but you can agree that if certain categories of things exist and certain measurements come out, you can have either an objective or subjective measurement of risk that you and I could start with the same basic data, come up with basically the same basic answer. Safety is more like the acceptability of risk. For example, take the mid-air collision that happened over DC a year or so ago. Before that mid-air collision with an airliner, it had been 38 years since there had been a collision like that in the US. The previous 38 years are an additional 7 mid-air collisions with airliners. And obviously the situation was not acceptable then. Changes were made, and there was a 38-year gap before there was another one. Now, I could say mathematically, the risk is a lot less now than it was 40 years ago. But there's no way I would say that the day before the accident, people thought it was safe, and the day after the accident, they thought it was safe. No, the day after the accident, they thought there's a problem, we should address it. Risk is lower. The level of acceptability of that risk was something altogether different.
Okay. Prior to a few years ago, I know it was in the FAA handbooks that any sort of UFO or UAP visual close encounter in the sky, pilots were supposed to call Bigelow Aerospace or Bigelow Advanced Aerospace Space Systems. And there was a phone number in the aviation handbook about that. Since Robert Bigelow, the billionaire tycoon out of Las Vegas, no longer is really in the UFO scene, is there nobody who has replaced those type of sightings?
No one in the private sector or in the nonprofit sector. And as I was saying before about the air traffic control part of the federal government, there is a new policy in place that actually directs it within government. What isn't existing right now is a policy that directs it toward government and then have that information shared with the people. When it came to many of the things I've worked with, bird strikes being one of them, there are ways to get at that data, gathered from all sorts of places, put in a place at the FAA where you can actually find it. Same thing with lasers being pointed at aircraft. There's laser sightings or laser strike database. You can go there and see how many times people have pointed a laser at an airplane. Now, is that going to be enough for you to eliminate the problem? No, but it's enough for you to be aware of the problem, where it's happening, how high the airplanes were, what color lasers you had. It's a starting point. It's not an end point. Drones. There is something called the Drone Sighting Near Airports database, which I nicknamed the Drones Behaving Badly database. People fly illegal drones. It gets reported, shows them in the database. Again, you're aware there's an issue. You have some description as to what manifests when that issue happens, and you can have some semblance of a chance of having a policy to reduce that risk, either through my 4 favorite options in government. There's education, there's regulation, there's incarceration, and stuff beyond incarceration that we're not going to talk about because that's too distressing. That's how, change is encouraged in the population. We don't have that when it comes to UAP. There's data being collected, but it's not being put out there in a way that the industry can use it to recognize that there's a problem. And without a recognition of the problem, there's not going to be a groundswell of support to make change happen.
So how does that change happen if it was already in place once before? The people in charge must know that.
The people in charge, well, I would hope that the people in charge have a sense of history about the subject that they might be over right now. For example, your favorite acronym and mine, ARROW. Whatever you might say about present or past leadership, it is an organization that exists right now to try and address the UAP issue. Are they aware of everything that's gone on since before Foo Fighters? Some of them, I'm sure, are history buffs and are very knowledgeable. Others are very, very competent. Not very knowledgeable about the history, but very knowledgeable about what are the objectives right now. Now, from the outside, that might seem that they're working at cross purposes with one another at times, or that they have no sensibility about it because they seem to be doing things that are ignorant of what has happened in the past. Point of fact, in many cases, they might be doing exactly that. But the fact is, we have something to point to. We have an arrow, good, bad, or ugly, that's not hidden under 5 layers of secrecy. We have data, scattered though it may be, that give us a hint of what's going on that we didn't have 30 or 40 years ago. And hey, with every risk that's out there, early on, there's a marketing challenge. Absent a big fireball and smoking crater, it's a difficult process to try and get bureaucracy, a global bureaucracy, to move in a particular direction. I say global because although change could happen, let's say, in a particular country, for it to be effective around the world, you have to get buy-in from a whole bunch of countries that may not agree on many other things, but do agree that aviation safety is a good that should be promoted.
Okay, so if they know that this is an issue, is the government cover-up of this topic then the reason why they haven't reinstated something or a group to look into these types of situations?
I think the issue is that there are different parts of the government with different sensibilities. For example, the folks who are behind the national security fence, where I used to live, they have their mission, series of missions. And unearthing information about this subject might compromise that mission. Now, I'm not going to pretend I know what's behind the fence there, but I will say this. There's probably a whole bunch of legitimate national security concerns around this issue. One of them being, if we release information from our sensors, even if the information is 20 years old, we're providing potential adversaries or actual adversaries with some insights into our capabilities or lack of capabilities in certain detection systems, for instance. That might be legitimate, and it might be a legitimate reason to block that information from being released. Does that carry over into areas where there is no risk of that? For example, do you have a blanket rule saying, don't say anything about this subject, even if it was eyewitness reports from, a ramp worker at an airport who has no security clearance, has no secrets. He or she is just reporting what he or she saw. That's being suppressed, as well as things that are being detected by the highest level radar systems out there. That's the issue that I think is more relevant here. Where do you stop with the national security excuse? And where do you start opening up the vaults of information? As many people have pointed out, the fact that certain vehicles might be out there flying, that might be a national security issue. The fact that there might be entities, not human, who are intelligent and living here on Earth, I'm speculating here, is that a national security issue? Well, if they've been living here for thousands of years and they haven't eaten us or tried to kill us, how much of a threat are they?
Well, that is one of the questions that I have.
Or maybe they are eating us behind our backs and we don't know it. Even if that were the case, let's go science fiction here. Let's say that there are some malevolent players to be named later who are prancing around completely without regard to our rules and regulations and morals and whatnot. Are we being hurt or helped by being separated from that information? What if the boogeyman is real? Let's get UAPs out of here. What if the boogeyman is not a myth? What if there is such a thing as a boogeyman? We know where he and she lives. We know where they party and everything else. Why not tell us about it?
And that's,
you might have the good sense to not be where the boogeyman's, having a party.
and that's the question that we have, that many of us have. I want to ask you, because you brought this up a couple of times really shortly, but what do air traffic controllers say about this topic when reporting anomalous objects?
I actually had a conversation recently with a retired air traffic controller. It was a senior air traffic controller who he wrote an article in Flying Magazine. I believe his name was Jason Judy, and you can look up the article online, where he, among other things, is saying that air traffic controllers are hearing things on a regular basis from pilots who report things in the sky. And there is a process now for reporting those, but this apparently is something that is so routine that it's not something that shocks people within that community. Now, what these things are that they're seeing, that remains to be seen, but the reports are out there. Now, some of them, rarely, are some that can be identified after the fact. I'll give you one example where the report, an internal report from the FAA, which I got through a Freedom of Information Act request. In the narrative, the pilot said, "We saw an unidentified anomalous object." or whatever, UAP. Unidentified, I should know this. We saw some unidentified anomalous phenomena. Great. Somebody actually put UAP in a report. My question is, was it a UAP? I brought this case up to some of my colleagues, and one of them happened to say, hey, at the time that happened, there was a SpaceX launch over in California. The report was out of Colorado. I thought, okay, there's a report in Colorado. There's a space launch in Vandenberg. Could their sighting be the rocket? The sighting said, no, we saw this locally. It was a rocket coming up from Alamosa, Colorado. I'll make a long story short. I did some math. They were flying high enough near Alamosa, Colorado, 40,000 feet, to have seen the last 2 to 4 seconds of the first stage booster of this SpaceX rocket coming out of Vandenberg. And why that's important? Because in the narrative, they said, we saw what looked like a rocket plume, then it stopped. Well, those of you who watch Falcon 9's launch, first stage rocket has a very white plume because I think it's a kerosene and liquid oxygen mix. The second stage rocket has a different fuel mixture, and you basically have no plume. So from a distance, you see a plume, suddenly you see nothing. And I thought, can they have done so from 750 nautical miles out? The answer is yes, just barely. And you have to figure in some refraction of the light because of the atmosphere. Coincidentally, there was a Facebook group out of El Paso, roughly the same distance from Vandenberg, which had a viewing party for the same launch. And they had the second stage over the hills in the distance. Did some quick math there, and yes, from ground level, you can't see any part of the first stage plume, but you can see the second stage plume from El Paso. So that, coupled with what the Alamosa people saw, I said to myself, this was a UAP, but now I have high confidence this was a SpaceX plume. Didn't think it was possible to see it from 750 nautical miles away, but hey, the facts are the facts.
Way up north where I live one night, interesting story, little sidebar. We were sitting on top of this mountain waiting for, it's known to have Sasquatch activity up there. And yeah, I'm one of them silly people who goes out in the forest at night looking for these big ogres. And my buddy Mark looks out to the east of us and he goes, hey, what's that? And, this is going back like 8-9 years ago now. And there was a SpaceX rocket flying through the sky that night. I'd never seen a rocket going through the sky where you have, the white trail coming off the nose of the rocket and then the engine blast behind it. That was one of the most amazing spectacles I've ever seen in the sky. It was absolutely amazing. I hope to get to see that again one day, but hopefully we'll see where it goes. Our guest tonight, Dr. Todd Curtis from airsafe.com is our guest. We got about 6 minutes to go here before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. In your perfect scenario, what should pilots do if they see something anomalous? Should they report it? Many of them still keep it very quiet because they don't want to A, have the stigma, or B, have the give any ammunition to potentially losing their wings because they saw a UFO, and there is that stigma attached to that. Just curious, how do you think commercial pilots and private pilots especially should react to this?
Well, the first thing, this is why I tell people who are flying, no matter what the situation is, you come across an unusual situation, your first responsibility is to continue to fly the airplane. Or as I was taught way back when, aviate, navigate, communicate. That is, continue to fly the airplane safely, maneuver it to a safe direction or a safe landing, or whatever the case may be. And only when those two things have been satisfied, you communicate. And I think that is the case with UAP, except the communication isn't necessarily with air traffic control. It's communication after the fact. After everything has calmed down, sit down and document it. Even if the only person you tell is yourself, I think it's very important that when an extraordinary situation happens, be it a garden variety emergency or you saw something from out of this world, document it. Then you have the decision to make. Do I tell others? Now, in some countries like the US and Canada, there are anonymous reporting systems, either with the government or with your own organization, where you can anonymously report something. And the organization I promote all the time in the US is NASA's Aviation Safety Reporting System. Been around for over 50 years, over 2 million submissions. And they tout that if someone is anonymously reporting something, their identity has never been revealed by NASA. So freely do it there. Now, what if you're not in the US or flying a US registered aircraft or flying through US airspace? Different countries have different systems. Some of them have no system at all, which puts you in the same position as the whole world was in 40 years ago. Who are you going to call? Not Ghostbusters. Who are you going to send it to? Sure, there are nonprofit and private organizations that take UFO data. MUFON, National UFO Reporting Center, Americans for Safe Aerospace, many organizations around the world that are non-governmental who take this. Is it going to be useful to send it there? Maybe, maybe not. Some of them are quite open about sharing their database to the world, letting anybody look at it, like National UFO Reporting Center. Others, not so much. And internally, within your organization, there's a common practice around the world for something called a safety management system. That is an in-house system where events, issues, problems, safety concerns are gathered up. And that organization can use that to their advantage to keep things from incidents from turning into accidents, for instance. It's a flawed system because it depends on who the gatekeepers are, just like with the government. I know of a case, not in the US or Canada, where allegedly this combination of events happened. Pilot saw something, reported it to the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper was concerned because the gatekeeper had a close family member who happened to be on this very flight. So someone they knew and loved was at risk, yet this gatekeeper decided not to submit this to the anonymous reporting system for whatever reason. No one would have been embarrassed. Everyone knew that this person was a gatekeeper, but this person wasn't the one who wrote the report. Yet, for whatever reason, he or she felt compelled not to use that system to its for its intended purpose, to inform others about risk that they're facing in operations.
We got about 2 minutes to go here. Let's see if we can sneak one more question in for you. Approximately how often are pilots calling in these type and reporting these types of incidents? Do we know? Is there a percentage?
It's hard to say because the FAA and other organizations like that don't publish detailed reports of how often are certain categories of things reported. Now, the internet is generous in that there are many organizations out there like liveatc.net. I'm not getting a payment from them. It's just one of the ones I use, where they have literally live streams of radio traffic from all over the world. Some countries don't allow that. It's illegal for you to get over-the-air transmissions, but let's put those aside right now. And on occasion, those things are cut and pasted, put online, and people find out about them. But again, it's not a systematic method. Yes, you do hear about things on occasion. And is this enough? No. Is going through the official channels easier or harder? By personal experience, harder. It took me about 6 months to get an air traffic control conversation from one of the two aircraft involved in one of the incidents I was looking at. Even though it happened literally an hour from each other, even though I put in the request at the same time, I got the transcript from one, but not the other. The FAA didn't tell me why.
Do you think they're gatekeeping secrets as well? 10-second answer.
In a bureaucracy, to choose between a planned malfeasance or being a bureaucracy, I choose the latter.
And on that note, we have Dr. Todd Curtis till the top of the hour here on Spaced Out Radio. His website, airsafe.com. The website, once again, airsafe.com. When we return on Spaced Out Radio with Dr. Todd, we are going to get into audience questions and more. We'll be right back. This Spaced Out Radio. listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott. That chocolate milk you're drinking there?
This is a protein shake.
Oh, you're one of them healthy people.
Semi-healthy.
Oh, man.
I'd rather be drinking stuff out of the bottles behind you.
Yeah, that is my alien tequila from the when you turn off to go to Rachel, Nevada, there's a little novelty store there that has a bunch of alien and UFO stuff. I forget what it's called. Got the alien tequila there. Damn near didn't get it across through my flight on my luggage, and thankfully it didn't break. And I paid like $150 US for that, so that's like 900 Canadian. I got a bottle of Night Train there. So if you remember Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, so this bottle right here.
Oh my God.
Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. They have a song called Night Train. This is the booze that they were working on there. And it's like, back in the day, it was like $2 a bottle. That's what they could afford. But it was like $9 a bottle. And you can only get it in some very seedy areas of SoCal now. Right beside that, there's a guy in California who creates a whiskey called Abducted Whiskey. So that, hold on, let me get it. Where is it? Right here. Like that. And then I have a bottle of beer that I've never opened. It's called Dark Matter. Then I got a bottle of Jack Daniels, which was a gift to one of our resident ghosts in our museum, that you have to make an offering to him so that way he won't attack you. So it's a bottle of Jack Daniels. For him. Yeah. So it works. You having fun?
I am having fun. This is a quick 90 minutes so far. You were right. It's going to be the quickest 2 hours.
I told you.
I barely scratched the surface.
Well, this just means that you're going to have to return. I'm sorry, but we're going to force you to return here.
Man, you know, one of the things about the UAP community, by the way, I got introduced full on to the UAP community a couple of years ago, 2024, where I was invited to Contact in the Desert.
Right.
And I told the folks, look, I'm going to give you the same talk I would give my aviation colleagues. I said, that's okay, do it. And it was a very fascinating experience. I learned a lot from it. And more backstory. About 15 years ago, one of the things I did in between the other things in my aviation career, I was at a startup dealing with online advertising. Startup went bust, but I used what I learned to start a business brokering ads. And one of the cadre of websites that I regularly posted ads on were the paranormal. So I got very, very familiar with some of the players in that field. My favorite website is still OregonBigfoot.com. Not just any Bigfoot, Oregon Bigfoot.
That's
and
right.
Some of the folks I sold ads to ended up on cable channels talking about UAP and stuff later on.
Well, if you ever want to get scared, I'll take you to a real weird place.
I'm absolutely sure you could.
My area up here that I go to every weekend is like a mini Skinwalker Ranch. And it's
Are the neighbors friendly? That's all I want.
Well, let's just say last night there was voices in the trees that were trying to lure us in again. And I said to my team, it's time for us to go. It's time for us to go.
Now you make me think about the guy running Missing 411.
Yeah, I'm not being on a David Politis show. But what was really cool is for 2 weeks, I had my trail cam set up right by my gifting site for the Sasquatch. And my gifting sites will record 1-minute videos, and somehow our gifting site had 2 more objects in it than were usually there, and we don't know how they got there. So that's kind of cool. I'm going to put you on mute. We're going to get going right now.
Very good.
Here we go with the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We appreciate you tuning us on in right here as we talk to Dr. Todd Curtis from airsafe.com. And Dr. Todd, we appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us over the last 90 minutes. I know we only got you till the top of the hour, but I do want to get my audience involved in this because I think, part of the beauty of this show is we're able to get questions and help our audience get some answers. So we're going to start off here with JP, who is asking, was the Chicago O'Hare incident detected on radar?
Not to my knowledge. There was a fairly intense study about that done by NARCAP. I can't remember the acronym for NARCAP, but they did study that. I don't recall what they said about radar, but I do distinctly remember that the air traffic control cab, the way that it was constructed, they could not look up at a high enough angle to see it. So the air traffic controllers were not aware of this. And also, without getting technical, airport radars or aircraft radars for air traffic control rely on transponders. That is a device that sends out a signal. They don't have a strong enough signal to do skin paint. That is, if a physical object is just there and doesn't have a transponder, you can't really see it on most air traffic control radars.
What if it's top secret military?
The go-to there is, if this was top secret to military and you decided to, on your own, fly above Chicago's O'Hare Airport, careers would be ended. People might be court-martialed.
And I don't think top secret military leaves a big round hole in the clouds.
No. And if you had that sort of thing and you were crazy enough to expose it to the public, again, heads wouldn't literally roll, but it's not something you want to do to reveal a classified project to people who don't have clearance.
All right, let's move on here as our next question comes from Valiant here. Dr. Todd, what's your thoughts on flight MH370?
Well, I'll be very controversial and say this. I believe at some point, for reasons as yet unknown, a decision was made to deliberately change the course of that aircraft to fly in a direction that would take it to the most inaccessible part of the Indian Ocean possible until the aircraft ran out of fuel and it crashed.
Why do you think that happened? What's your opinion on that?
It was a deliberate action. Whether it was a deliberate action for nefarious purposes, someone committing suicide or mass murder, or whether it was done to deal with a real and present danger, that they thought the best course of action was to turn the aircraft in that direction. The fact that it essentially was going in a straight line for all that time meant that whoever was in the cockpit was either unwilling or unable to make any changes to the flight path.
And I'm not denying your portion of this because I don't think it was aliens. I'm just going to tell you right now, I don't think it was aliens. But here's, the head scratchers for me on that case. Back in the day, there were no cell phones that were waterproof. And yet what happened back in the day is when you got a cell phone wet, it would kill the phone, which means if you called that phone, you wouldn't get a ringtone. It would go straight to voicemail or straight to say, this phone is out of service or what have you. And yet the loved ones were calling their phones and they were ringing. That's one of them. The other one too was Facebook, because back during that time on Facebook, you had a little green or blue dot that showed that you were online. And these people, many of them who passed, were actually seen with that little blue dot that they were online. How could they do that if they were not present or that they had crashed into the ocean? Now, those are just a couple of questions that I have about it. But I mean, your reporting seems logical on that. So do you think there is any potential conspiracy with this flight?
There is a potential conspiracy. However, actually, I'm not going to say there's an actual conspiracy. I will say this. Because of international rules, the way they're set up, the country responsible for the investigation was the country of registration for this aircraft. So is that country going to be as transparent as Canada, US, UK in an accident investigation, or are they not going to be? And quite frankly, the amount of information coming out from the official investigation is far less, in my opinion, than you would have gotten from if this were a US registered aircraft or Canadian registered aircraft. These things you say about the loved ones, I have no doubt that they're true. Was there someone officially tracking this down to ensure that this was due to one reason and not the other? I'm not aware of that. Do they have an incentive to do that? Good golly, this is like 12 years after the fact. Was it 2014? Am I getting my dates right here? 12 years after the fact, the trail in many cases has gone cold. I'm pretty sure that all the phones that existed right back then that had those messages coming in, they've upgraded several times since then. So could you get the original hardware and run tests on that today? Or has that original hardware been thrown in the trash or sold down the pike somewhere?
Internet back. There we go. Sorry about that. My internet crashed out on me there for a second.
Well, you heard me waxing poetically about the difficulty of doing a forensic analysis 12 years after the fact, especially on those phones, which are probably no longer either A, working, or B, in the possession of the original owners. Not to mention the cell phone providers back 12 years ago. They've probably, in my opinion, been purchased by 2 or 3 multinationals since then, and they don't exactly keep records that long of customers who are no longer with them.
Let's go to hidden files. 112 years of commercial aviation, tens of billions of flight hours. There's never been a documented mid-air collision between a commercial aircraft and a UFO or UAP. Why the concern now? What changed?
Well, as far as a documented mid-air collision between a commercial aircraft and a UFO or UAP, there have been collisions. In fact, I was reading one the other day, which didn't make one lick of sense. We're talking about an airliner cruising at 39,000 feet. And they said, the crew said, I saw a shadow above the aircraft. Then I heard something hit the aircraft. We landed, and there was a sort of like foot wide or dinner plate sized depression with a heavy depression in the middle, no bird debris. And this was an altitude above most, but not all bird strikes. It was consistent with a physical object striking the aircraft, but there is no clue what that physical object was. It's a UAP only because it lacks evidence to prove what it was or what it wasn't. And it was a mid-air collision. It only caused a dent to the aircraft. It didn't take the aircraft out entirely. Now, I think what the listener was implying, a mid-air collision that took out the aircraft entirely. Maybe. Most mid-air collisions are not heavily investigated, even in the United States and Canada, because let's say you have a small aircraft flying wherever, and it hits something and it crashes. You have the wreckage on the ground. You may or may not have witness marks and other evidence on the aircraft that it hit something, but would you have enough information to determine what the other something was? There have been at least a few cases I know of where there was a mid-air collision. The second aircraft, whatever it was never found. What's changed? The concern that's changed is that now that UAP are a thing to discuss, one of the natural questions is a UFO big enough to take out an aircraft, ever taken out an aircraft because of an accidental collision? I'm not aware of any mid-air collision investigations that are thoroughly mysterious in that regard.
All right, let's go to Nicole here. If it's a close encounter or near miss with a UFO, do you think a hazmat team should meet the aircraft when it lands? Or if you think there is any equipment besides sensors or cameras that aircraft should be equipped with to gather UFOs or UAP data?
On the latter, that's an easy and a hard question at the same time. Anytime you put equipment on an aircraft, that is required equipment that will be on not just one or two aircraft, but thousands of aircraft, that's a process that might take a decade from or more from this is a great idea, for example, collision avoidance systems, to actually fielding it and having it on enough airplanes to make it useful. So one has to ask yourself the question, if you had recording devices, visual, acoustic, radar, what have you, what would be the benefit? Can you make the argument, a regulatory-based argument, that the amount of money and effort to do this would have an effect that is more effective than 100 other things you can do to increase aircraft safety? So these things don't happen in isolation. If you have a good idea, there are other good ideas that are in competition. Even if that idea, they want to go ahead with it, it might be so expensive or so difficult that you're not going to get buy-in around the world to make it the standard. Now, that hasn't changed. The regulatory part of aviation safety hasn't changed. The fact that it's an inherently international endeavor, and to be effective, you have to essentially require everyone to do it. Otherwise, why should Airline A spend $1 billion to make improvements that, even if it works, probably is not going to save them directly any money in the next 20 or 30 years. But if everybody has no choice but to buy into it, yes, the entire community will benefit. I think this is a tragedy of the commons sort of thing. I don't remember my college history very well, but that whole idea that if you have a common resource, everyone has an incentive to use that common resource for their own personal benefit and not for the benefit of everyone. So how do you set up rules so you don't have somebody's sheep eating up everybody else's grass?
Well, that is the big one. That is the big one. Let's follow it up with Nicole one more time here. What if passengers have a sighting? What should they do if they see a UFO during a flight? Do they tell the flight crew?
I think that would be prudent if it were something that seemed to be a hazard to the aircraft. Let's take a non-UFO. Let's say that you're flying along internationally and suddenly you look out the window and you see an aircraft from a potential adversary country off the wing. Yes, tell the flight attendant, hey, there's a fighter jet off the wing. If it's not a fighter jet, but an ovoid bright object, tell the flight attendant there's an ovoid bright object out there, and they'll decide whether or not they'll take it up to the captain. By the way, passengers can see out the sides of the aircraft. The flight crew has very limited ability to see behind them. So if there's something pacing the aircraft off the wing, depending on the aircraft, the crew might not be able to see it from the cockpit. So yeah, tell the flight attendant. They'll tell the pilots.
All right, let's move on to another question from our audience here. Let's go to ACUF. How certain are you that the materials described were visible and or solid? This was going back a little bit in the show where we were talking about the visuals of, I believe it was, oh goodness. I'm gonna come back to that question. Hey, Cuffy, I know you're still in the chat room. Go into a little bit more detail about that, and I'll re-ask the question. I apologize about that. Wilford is asking, what about the jetpack people, like around the LA airport?
There was we actually covered that in my Flight Safety Detectives podcast a couple of years ago. There's at least one photograph that the LAPD had of the jetpack person. It was basically some sort of model that looked like a jetpack person. So was someone in a real life human being doing a jetpack thing over LA? Or was it a small scale human looking thing in some sort of jetpack balloon? It's unclear. But what is clear is this. There are jetpacks out there that can have a person flying at altitude, but they're so rare and so difficult to get that, yeah, you can do so. But there's a small number of people who have that technology for rent or for sale out there. And to my knowledge, the LAPD and the FAA has not tracked down a physical jetpack that was involved. Again, I've seen at least one LAPD photo of a balloon type thing that looked like a jetpack, but that's as far as it went.
I got to ask this question. JP just brought it up, and I was actually thinking about this when you were talking about collisions. Back in 2017, an airplane carrying the NBA's Oklahoma City Thunder had a mid-air strike at 30,000 feet that crushed the nose cone of the jet. Did you ever know, or did you ever hear about what the determining incident was?
On that particular one, no. But I will say this, having looked at incidents for years now, sometimes you have nose radome collapses because of the structural failure of the radome, or from a bird striking it, or from ice, or any number of things could cause it to get damaged. Because unlike the rest of the fuselage, it might be aluminum or, let's say, carbon fiber that's stronger than aluminum. The radome typically is transparent to radar because they have weather radar up there and such. It's made from a different material that is much more easily damaged if it's hit by something.
Yeah, I remember the players saying they just heard a big boom and they all thought that the plane was going to go down after that. So credit to the pilots for keeping that pretty level there. Great professionalism. JSCO is asking, Dr. Curtis, did you say you recently worked a case where multiple objects were flying around civilian aircraft? If so, can you please tell that story?
Certainly. Your audience may remember in December and November of 2024, there was a whole bunch of media reports about drones around New York and New Jersey. And I decided that, some of these reports were kind of outlandish. And I thought, are any of these reports in New York and New Jersey really unusual so that they're not drones? So that database I mentioned, the drone sightings near airports database / drones behaving badly, I thought, let me wait until the fourth quarter of 2024 comes out. I'll just get the spreadsheet, list them by state and city, and see if anything in New Jersey or New York was really unusual. There are about 40 cases in New Jersey and New York. All of them seem to be garden variety drones because they were identified by the pilots and such. Nothing really outrageous. There was one record between New York and New Jersey, alphabetically, New Mexico. And I casually at the end of the night thought, let me read this one event. It was extraordinary. This is the one I talked about earlier, the 34,000 foot cruising 767, that the crew reported 25 drones in all directions. And 4 of them were essentially for an hour maneuvering around the aircraft. This is the one where I went to the Freedom of Information Act, tried to get the air traffic control tapes. I got the report I talked about earlier, that air traffic controllers, right? It was much more detailed than what was in the drone sightings near airports database. It talked about the ground speed, more descriptions of what was happening. Happened to be an event an hour later on the same flight path. The 767 was going to LA. There was a 787 an hour later that saw a single version of what was circling around the aircraft. Let me back up a little bit. The first one said it saw 25, but it said the 4 that was nearby had red and white lights. The second airliner, the original report said 25 drones, but when I got the full report, it said only one drone, quote unquote. It too had red and white lights. No information to connect those two other than coincidentally they happen an hour apart. But the first one, the combination of all that was observed, its airspeed, its altitude, didn't fit any acknowledged program I know of drones, either civilian or military. Now, if they were mistaken and these were actually crewed aircraft, that still was beyond the pale, because flying 4 crewed aircraft around another airliner when that airliner is not playing the game with them, and doing so without any sort of authorization whatsoever, is beyond reprehensible. Folks would have been in serious trouble with the FAA and the federal government if they were found out. So was this a UAP as in not traditional technology? I don't know. I do know this. Nothing was observed that was beyond the capability of conventional technology. The behavior was well beyond behavior you would expect, even from people who don't have a lick of sense to them. Because again, there are 4 things there. You either had 4 different people flying them, or an extraordinarily capable person remotely controlling this 34,000 feet. They're maybe hundreds of miles away. They have no way of being able to see what's around them unless they have the kind of sensor systems that I don't know exist for remote aircraft. Anyway, without getting off on a tangent there, that event made no sense, which is why I said it was a UAP event, because it fit the general criteria I have for UAP, which included a conventional aircraft in an unconventional situation or location.
All right. I want to ask you, and we do have more questions, but we only got about 3.5 minutes left. And just kind of thinking over with what you were talking about, what about the Japan Airlines flight near Alaska that encountered that mothership? Have you ever looked into that case?
I have, and in fact, Callahan, I think is the gentleman's name, was an FAA official who was very, very public about this. To make a long story short, a cargo airliner crew, just 3 pilots on board, saw a huge UFO and 2 smaller UFOs for a considerable amount of time over Alaska. Allegedly, the Air Force was involved in air radar and whatnot, and they weren't able to figure out what went on. Later on, there was a presentation by the FAA person in Anchorage, I think it was. And according to his story, the CIA came in there and say, a CIA official came in there and say, I want everything in the room about this. He complied, but it wasn't everything he had. He apparently had stuff outside of the room. He kept that, and he was talking about it at least for 15, 20 years after that. And my conclusion, something happened. The US federal government does know about that. They have not released officially information about what they confiscated or what they know about that.
The pilot who had served 32 flawless years for Japan Airlines, him and his crew were fired because they had felt that they had brought disgrace to the airline for calling in this mothership. They eventually got their reinstated, but I mean, it just goes to show. I mean, I think that's the classic case
It
of
is.
why pilots were not willing to put their livelihoods on the line, because of a UFO incident could ground them.
And that was a realistic concern across the industry, not just in Japan. And even to this day, I would, in my opinion, in most of the world, if you were as honest about a sighting as people are honest now in the U.S., either air traffic controllers or pilots, your career would be in jeopardy.
And that's changed.
It's changing slowly in some countries, and it may go through a major step change should there be a reveal, either from, let's say, we're getting close to the top of the hour. What if the Phoenix Lights or the Chicago O'Hare event happened today versus decades ago? The number of recordings and still photographs would be different by a factor of several orders of magnitude. It would be impossible to stop the entire world from knowing about that within seconds of it happening. That sort of event happening today might change the public perception, the discussion, in ways well beyond what the 2017 New York Times article did.
My friend, we only have about 30 seconds left with you, and I want to say a big thank you for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Tell everybody where they can find your information.
Well, you can find out a lot about what I'm doing currently by going to the website flightsafetydetectives.com. That's a podcast run by myself and a couple of former NTSB officials where we talk about all manner of safety things, including UAP. And for older material, especially going back to 96 when I started it, my website airsafe.com has all sorts of things about passenger safety, baggage, airline safety, and if you dig deeply enough, a couple of UFO articles.
Awesome. Dr. Todd Curtis, everybody. We're definitely bringing him back. He's just too good. Way
Can't
too
wait
good.
to come back.
Coming up next, Swamp Dweller and Josh Rutledge with the UFO Report.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, my friend, we are clear. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you had a good time.
I had a great time.
That's awesome. I'd love to do it again. That was so much fun.
One of these days, if we're lucky, we'll have some alien ale together.
Let's do it. Let's do it. All right, my friend, you take care. Go get some sleep.
Will do.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye. How awesome was Dr. Todd Curtis? Wow.
Stop now! You're under arrest! Hands up! Don't move!
Don't get caught without your spaced out radio merchandise. We have t-shirts, mugs, hoodies, socks, hats, stickers, and so much more. Whatever you're looking for, we have you covered. Why just be a fan of the paranormal when you can look the part? We don't have ugly merch, folks. Check out the Spaced Out Radio store. Find the link in the description below.
Dirty filth. Dirty filth. Dirty filth.
Object is heading north 045 degrees. It's definitely not a plane. It seems to be tethered to something. Is that a banner tow? Caribou Con. Does anyone know what Caribou Con is?
Caribou Con, one of the BC Caribou region's best kept secrets. Until now. Join our panel of renowned paranormal experts for a weekend of fun and intriguing presentations. Go to cariboucon.com to book or inquire now.
Over here. Look at this.
Discover Spaced Out Radio on all your favorite platforms. We're live every single night with the best in UFOs, cryptids, paranormal, and the unexplained. And you can find us on all your favorite platforms. Head over to Instagram for behind the scenes and daily weirdness, TikTok for quick mind-bending clips, Facebook for community discussions, and X for real-time updates and hot takes. Wherever you scroll, Spaced Out Radio is there. So go search Spaced Out Radio on every platform, hit follow, and turn on notifications so you never miss a single episode. The weird is waiting. See you there.
The McNeil House is one of several buildings at the 108-mile heritage site said to be haunted by spirits of a time long forgotten. But would you stay the night? Along with guided ghost tours and paranormal investigations, Haunted 108 is offering a chance to spend the entire night inside the historic McNeil House by booking one of our B&B style sleepovers, where you can experience the hauntings firsthand, meet the resident ghost cat, and witness unusual activity. If you dare to turn history into a night you'll never forget, book your spot now at haunted108.com. Spots are limited. Will you be brave enough?
Big thank you as we bring in the wizard who is filling in for vacationing. Grant Baker. He goes away every Father's Day week. Hanging on out. Appreciate you filling on in this week there, wizard.
Yep. Glad to be here, man. Glad to be here.
All right. First little bit is going to be just non-UFO related, as you know. Little Mikey, how you doing? Nice to see you. Thanks for coming on in. And thank you to our super chatters, Claudette, T-Bone, Bigfoot Fades, Walter, Erica, and Kitty. We appreciate you. Here we go with hour 3, guys. Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for tuning us on in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network, our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Babbledom. Babbledom is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head to the swamp.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Swamp. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey of the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp. I was younger when this story occurred. Of course, all the adults say kids have a wild imagination, even though my buddy and I swore up and down that this had happened. Anywho, let's get to the story. It was toward the end of the week, and my mom and her boyfriend at the time, I wanted to go up the mountain to his family's cabin. I live north of Wyoming, where the Bighorn Mountains reside. As a 12-year-old, I asked my mom if I could bring my buddy. For his safety, his name will be Nick. I called Nick and asked if he wanted to go to the cabin for the weekend. He had to ask his mom, and with our moms being close since they were younger, she said yes. Once we got everything in my mom's boyfriend's pickup, we went ahead and picked him up. As he hopped into the back of the truck, we talked about the general things that typically we would talk about, school, girls, etc. As we got to the cabin on the first day, nothing really major happened. We went four-wheeling and had hot dogs and s'mores. And the first night came and went without incident. The start of the next day is when things began to get a little spooky. The day went normal as much as it could. Towards the afternoon, we stayed around the cabin. My mom kicked us out of the place after lunch. We hiked around the house and we discussed a few different things such as movies, shows, Call of Duty, etc., as well as grabbing a stick and pretending to be in Call of Duty, as weird as it may have sounded. Towards dusk, I showed him the treehouse, roughly 70 to 80 yards away from the cabin. The treehouse is a triangular platform 10 feet up in the air made of 2x4s and a makeshift ladder. The platform is between 3 trees on each point in a triangle shape, with rails to help with safety and all that. We had our legs dangling from the platform, talking again with the occasional silence between us talking. The forest became dead, which is a natural sign of a predator being around, which became a big red flag with both of us knowing that, especially with us going hunting every fall. We ended up getting the chills. Nick broke the silence. Hey, do you see that? As he struggles to get the sentence out. So that's all the light we had. A feeling of fight or flight. With the sun setting and it being all the light we had, that feeling of fight or flight came through our bodies. We began to hear something crashing through the brush, and in the distance, we saw what I can only describe as a giant, hairy humanoid creature peering at us from behind a tree that was roughly 50 feet away from us. It was at least 9 feet tall. Once I realized what it could be, the hair on the back of our necks stood up immediately. Our first mistake was looking at each other as shock kicked in. We looked back at where the creature was, and now it was a bit closer. It was kind of like suspense from those movies in like Jurassic Park when the raptor broke through the glass. We both hopped off, and as I'm looking back and forth between Nick and the creature, he hopped down and ran to the meadow in front of the cabin, closer to where we were. Looking back at the beast, I saw it was about 30 yards away. Fear filled my body, and I shook without looking away from the beast. I scooted my butt over as I was getting ready to run when I happened to look up and saw this thing face to face. I saw it in its full glory, hair covered head to toe with a brown and blonde mixture of color. With the setting sun putting an orange tint to it, I ended up freaking out as though I had seen death itself. I jumped to the ground, rolling as I hit it, getting up and booking it to the same meadow as my friend. Nick was waiting there already. As I'm running, I hear twigs and sticks breaking behind us. I knew this thing was chasing me. Once I got closer to the meadow, I saw Nick telling me to run. As I got to him, I looked back and saw the creature in the tree line. As we were staring at it, it was staring right back. It did something we will never forget. With us catching our breath, we heard it. It was like a loud roar. We ended up booking it to the front of the cabin, slamming the door shut, and my mom and her boyfriend looked at us puzzled. They were asking us questions and we tried to answer, but as I said, they thought we were crazy. After dinner and having some s'mores, we ended up going to bed. The cabin had an open area upstairs, where the 6 beds were for us kids to hang out in. Towards the back of the upstairs is a screen door. I woke up sometime in the middle of the night to a sound of scratching on wood. The light outside the screen never turns off. I saw a hand scraping the deck floor outside. I freaked out because I swear it was the same hand from that creature.
Not hearing you, Dave.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's get right to it as we got Josh Rutledge in for the UFO report. You know what sucks, Josh, is I actually loaded up your audio and for some reason it's not playing. I don't know why. It's just not playing.
I could sing what little bit I remember.
I'm a little disappointed in this because it's supposed to play. It is supposed to play. I'm going to try and reload it here for a second.
Okay.
Just give me 2 seconds because we
Sure.
definitely want to play the wizard music. See if this portion will work. All right, let's try this part out. Let's try this out.
Radio presents a UFO report. The UFO wizard makes his presence known. Just when it's ready to go.
All right, Josh Rutledge filling in for a vacationing Grant Baker this week as we get ready for the Father's Day weekend. And it really, really is a somber note to this because Spaced Out Radio listeners, if you've been listening in the last couple of years, we've had a great friend named Brent Thomas from the Paranormal Portal podcast. And Brent was an incredible supporter of what we do on Spaced Out Radio. and I hate to use the term was, but unfortunately, this past weekend, we lost Brent to a heart attack on Sunday. And I'm just devastated. I am absolutely devastated by this because Brent was going to be one of our speakers at CaribouCon this year. And I had never met Brent, but he was going like face to face. Him and I talked all the time. And the one thing that I would say is that we really, really, in this internet world, build bonds and friendships with people all over the world. And chances are the majority of them you're never going to meet face to face. I've been very fortunate through going to conferences and holding our SOR events in Las Vegas and Reno, where we've had a number of listeners come by and say hello. We've had a number of guests on this show. Josh, I had the privilege of getting to finally meet you last year at our Vegas event that we did. And, you know, I take that as a real privilege. And I was very much looking forward to meeting Brent and being, you know, taking that friendship to a personal level rather than over the phone or online through video programs, whether it's StreamYard or whether it's Facebook or WhatsApp or whatever it may be. And unfortunately, you know, we lost a really good voice and even and more incredible human being in Brent Thomas. And I'm just absolutely devastated. You know, you never want to have these types of portions in your show when you have such a great show going on. The last thing that you want to do is have to pay tribute to somebody. That's not an insult to Brent. That's not an insult to anybody, but it's because it hurts. And, you know, I know you talked to Brent a couple of times, Josh, and I know you were pretty shocked to find out about this horrible news as well.
Yeah. And it just seems like, you know, within the last, let's say, you know, 6 weeks or so, we've had quite a few, you know, unfortunate losses within our community, you know, and it just, our community, the UFO community, the strange community, whatever you want to call it, it's kind of big, but it also is rather small. Right? We all know of the voices and the key voices in the community and and the work that they do, and I think that, you know, at the end of the day, most people really start to think about, as especially they get older in life, what is their legacy going to be. And I think, you know, each of the individuals that we lost or that we will probably lose, you know, in the coming years in the community, will leave not only a legacy of discovery, of, you know, investigation, of wonder, but, you know, what is always very, I would say, like, part of me says surprising, but it shouldn't be, is how deep many of these people's lives were outside of our community, right? The things that they did is their career or their day job, or their other things that they did as hobbies that were not related to these topics at all. And I think sometimes we, you know, I certainly am guilty of this, get so caught up in somebody's legacy that they're forging in the UFO space, that I forget to think about all the great things that they've probably done outside of the UFO space, and really celebrating the depth of somebody's life as opposed to the little sliver of it that we get to experience with them.
You're absolutely right. And, you know, it's very rare that the public gets to learn the behind the scenes person, but who Brent was on the air was who he was as a person. And I feel very horrible for his beautiful wife, Anita, and their 3 children, including Sheldon, who would go on the Paranormal Portal podcast with Brent. And he was very proud of that. And I hope Sheldon continues the Paranormal Portal in some way, shape, or form. I mean, Brent was still a young man. I believe he was 54 or 55 years old. I mean, that's still very, very young in today's day and age. And you know, I've shed some tears over since I found out the news. I was actually out at Flight 21 looking for Bigfoot when out of nowhere I got signal on my phone. And during that time with the signal, I got a message from Brian Bowden to let me know of the news. And I was just absolutely distraught to find out about this tragic loss of our friend here. And it's a loss to the listeners, because for people on our radio side, the one thing that I will say, like as Josh said, our community may not be large. It's maybe not an NFL or an NBA or an NHL size community, or even a political community or whatever, but they are passionate and they stick together, and they help each other out when there is something that has gone awry or amiss. And, you know, I feel for all of Brent's listeners. He was very popular on YouTube and with his podcast. I feel for everybody. It's just such a devastating moment. You know, we called him B. Arthur around here, you know, and a lot of people have come up to me since finding out, why did you call him B. Arthur, Dave? Well, his first name, Brent, starts with the letter B, and his voice was so golden. He had such a smooth canter. He had such a smooth delivery. He was very eloquent behind the microphone, and he was golden. So, golden voice, your name starts with B Arthur. Why not? And he returned the favor by calling me Betty White. And, he did a show on Saturday night, and he cut the show early. He said he wasn't feeling very good. And then Sunday morning, he had his heart attack that unfortunately took him to the next round of life, if you believe in that like I do. And he's going to be sorely missed, you know, and we're blessed at Spaced Out Radio, where we have a lot of good people like Brent, like Josh here on the air with us tonight, Everett Thiemer, Jim Goodall, many, many others who I can call up in an instant to say, hey, something's happened with our guest, and I need a fill in. And they will be like, yep, not a problem. I'm there. And that's what not only friendship, but camaraderie is all about. You know, and I would do the same for these guys. Absolutely, I would. And to lose somebody that close to our Spaced Out Radio family it's painful. It's very painful. And, you know, I just, we're going to move on here because I literally don't want to break down. But I just want to say to his wife, Anita, Sheldon, and his other children, and I'm keeping their names out because I know Brent was very private in his life, but Sheldon was part of his show. That I just want to say thank you for allowing us to have Brent in our lives. Thank you for allowing us to have that little piece of Brent Thomas, who was not only an incredible man, but an incredible broadcaster and podcaster as well. And God bless him. And I'm very, very sad that we had looked forward to a full year of him coming up here for CaribouCon, September 18th through 20th. We were both so looking forward to it, and we were going to give each other a big hug, and we were going to share some laughs. And he was going to come up a couple of days earlier to hang out. He was going to drive himself from Idaho to get here, which is about an 8.5, 9-hour drive. But that's just the kind of guy he was. So Anita and your family and your children especially, thank you for sharing Brent with us. Thank you for allowing us to have that little piece of Brent Thomas with us. And it's something we will cherish for the remainder of our days on that. So I wanted to just get that out there. And
well, and Dave, I'll say, you don't usually talk to me very much about, the spiritual side of the phenomenon, but I do have quite a few thoughts there. And one of them is that I do believe that when people go, that they oftentimes remain as guides for us living that are still kind of going through the mortal coil, if you will. And perhaps you'll be blessed with having Brent as a guide for you as you continue on your journey in trying to both educate people on the topic, but also educate yourself.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of tributes on social media for Brent right now, and it's well deserved. It's very well deserved. And God bless him on his journey. Let's talk some UFOs here, as we have about 2 minutes here before we got to go to break, and then we'll continue that part of the conversation when we return. But the big news of the day, Josh, was Avi Loeb basically being granted as the head of the White House's UAP Science Advisory Council.
Yeah.
What's on this?
I'm curious then what Arrow is, because I thought that's what Arrow was supposed to be, is kind of a scientific panel to evaluate UFO sightings or UAP sightings. So not that Avi Loeb is potentially not deserving, and the people that would be on that panel, and the panel, maybe it needs to exist. It, if nothing else, perhaps it'll be a panel of independent scientists as opposed to, aligned to the government, in some way. But it really does bring into question for me, is this basically the Trump and his cabinet saying we see no purpose in Arrow anymore, so therefore we're going to spin up this other panel to go off and do what we anticipated or expected Arrow to do?
I never even thought about it at that point, my friend. I never even thought about the Arrow aspect of this all. I was more enthralled with looking at the list of names that were on there. And there was one that kind of caught me off guard in Dr. Michael Shermer, that I'm thinking, this guy hates this topic. He's been a skeptic since day one. He has really, been a thorn in the ufology side. And here he is on such an important board regarding discussion, debate, evidence, everything to the extreme about this topic. And of course, the other one that didn't catch me off guard, and we will get to this as well next on Spaced Out Radio, Dr. Gary Nolan. He's in the thrust of things once again. How does he manage to always get in there? The guy is brilliant, and much more. We'll talk about it next. Josh Rutledge, the UFO wizard, with the UFO report tonight.
This is Spaced Out Radio. Your host, Dave Scott.
All right, Wizard, we're clear.
Cool.
We are clear. Yeah, I'm still devastated, man.
Yeah, I never got an opportunity to actually interview Brent for my show or anything, but I've watched numerous times that he was on other people's shows, yours and others, and it was always a very interesting conversation.
He was very eloquent in his wording, very eloquent in his delivery of everything. It was just really, really cool. And to talk with him about anything. There were some hard days where I just needed a friend, and there he was. I am Pam, by the way. You know that? I'm just going to change my name here for a second because I am Pam. Hold on. I am Pam. That's because I am Pam is actually in our chat room tonight, but I am Pam. She can't be Pam if I am Pam. Who else joined us here? I think I got to clean out my one tower. Fan keeps going throughout the show, and it's driving me nuts.
Oh, yeah. I've got for Father's Day, and then my birthday is in August, and so I talked my wife into a joint Father's Day birthday present in the form of a new to me decently built gaming computer bought off Facebook Marketplace. So
good for you.
And I've already done some upgrades to it, but yeah, I wanted something. I'd had a little mini computer I've used for many years, but I wanted something I could upgrade, build on myself over the next few years, and so bought a good little unit. So running the graphics card is good enough that I can run a couple of local models on Olama. So I'm running some local AI as opposed to continuing to use the big data center AI and contribute to the problem. So
right.
Yeah.
Awesome. We got about 2 minutes. Colin, how you doing? Nice to have you here. I am Pam. Flat Six, how you doing? No, you can't be Pam flat Six if I am Pam. And don't even get Tim Mothman or his goatee going, because he'll start saying he's Pam too. When I am Pam. I am Pam. We have missed you around here. 90 seconds. Thank you tonight to our super chatters, T-Bone, Walter, Bigfoot Phase, Fades, Erica, Kitty, and Claudette. Robert Anthony, how you doing? Wilford Brimley, is it you or your diabetes that is Pam? We are all Pam. Tonight we are all Pam. I'm not going to argue that. We are all Pam. That's right, Goot. I am Pam, though. Oh, Grandizer, I'm not upset at all. I am not upset with you at all, brother. Why would I be upset? I have no idea. Is that all over the B. Arthur thing? I thought that was funny. Were you calling Brent old? No, not at all. Because his voice was golden. All right, here we go. 5 seconds. Here comes the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. How's it going, everybody? We got the UFO wizard, Josh Rutledge, here. And right before the break, Josh, we're talking about Avi Loeb's new group for UAP. The White House's own UAP Science Advisory Council has been named. The leader of the pack, Harvard theoretical physicist Dr. Avi Loeb, founder of the Galileo Project, former chair of Harvard's astronomy department, and best-selling author of Extraterrestrial, tapped to lead the new UAP Science Advisory Council appointed by the White House, Aero, and ODNI. Your thoughts, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, also I'll say you didn't mention it, but the FBI apparently, according to the article that Avi wrote on Medium, was also, asked him to form this council. I still think it's odd that, like I said before the break, it seems like Aero was the team or group that was really expected to do these things. So the fact that Aero and the White House is asking Avi to do it, calls into question the purpose of Aero at all at this point. It's also interesting in the article that Avi wrote on Medium. He said that there's a report from Kozlowski from 2023 that says 40% of all the reported phenomena lacked a reasonable explanation and remain unresolved. And Avi also stated in his article that he wants to find here, I can't remember the exact wording that was used, but something to the effect of there's these millions of objects that, have a potential for creating a national security concern for what is actually moving around our secure sites, whether it be, drones or balloons or whatever the case may be. Most of his article that he wrote, I guess in relation or response, really aligns with the notion of there's a potential threat in that these things are moving with impunity throughout our airspace, and we don't know how to identify them and therefore track them. And that type of thinking is, you and I have talked about it ad nauseum, that comes from like Leo Elizondo and others in that space, seems to be, not really what the majority of the community would call or think of these things as being, a threat narrative, if you will. So there's just a lot, I think, to unpack with all of this. As far as the actual, individuals that make up the council, I think it's a pretty good balance. They've got some, skeptics, extreme skeptics, perhaps, on the council, but maybe you need that to balance the people like Avi who, maybe tend to lean more on the unknown side of the house.
What do you think about the idea of Michael Shermer, Dr. Michael Shermer, being on the list? Shermer has been a thorn in the side of the UFO community for the better part of 2 decades, basically calling UFO people, crockpots for believing in this type of phenomena that is happening out there. and he really doesn't seem to go into any evidence. He already seems to have an opinion, much like Neil deGrasse Tyson did before, the tranches of files came out.
Yeah, I mean, we've also talked about this before. I think skepticism as an investigator is healthy.
Agreed.
Without it, you don't consider the other possibilities of things and what they could be. Then you end up calling everything an unknown, and then somebody comes along and says, well, what about this? It has a green and a red flashing light, and it shows up on Flight Radar 24, and then it calls into question your credibility. So I think being skeptical is important. But being cynical is a problem. And I don't, Shermer seems to be more of the cynical side of the house as it relates to the possibility of this stuff being anything other than man-made or natural phenomena. But that being said, maybe you need that kind of, dissent in a group like this. You need someone who's gonna push back on every possible case and say it's a balloon, it's a whatever. My argument, though, would be that it is the responsibility of any person that would make a claim as to what something is. It is an equal responsibility to provide supporting evidence. It can't just be, it looks like a balloon, therefore it is a balloon. It has to be, it portrayed, it characteristics equivalent with a balloon. Here, look, I flew a balloon under the same conditions and recorded the data to be able to show that it is the same character. The problem that I've had with a lot of the sightings, like the jellyfish or whatever that flew over the Middle East, that everybody said was a collection of like graduation balloons or something. Just because you can take graduation balloons and kind of finagle them around to make them fit into the shape that is the jellyfish UAP does not provide conclusive evidence that that's what it was. And so my argument would be for anybody who's on this council who would propose or make a claim as to what something is as an explanation, is they are all equally responsible for providing adequate evidence to support their claim.
That makes a lot of sense. Dr. Gary Nolan is also on this board. His name always seems to pop up on any sort of UFO or UAP scientific forum or even business forum. Your thoughts of him being here?
Yeah, I mean, Gary Nolan has certainly, since he was involved with the Skywatcher group, about a year and a half or so, 2 years ago, he's really, he's put himself in the middle of these things. Always, though, with the way that he would describe it as being there to ensure that the scientific method is followed. I think that Gary is a I won't say believer. I think he's received enough evidence in cases or whatever that he has probably transitioned, or he's crossed the line from believer into knower. I don't know if he's ever had his own personal experience, but at least from an evidence review perspective, I believe he's crossed the line into knower. So, to balance Shermer, Gary Nolan would be someone who might be more apt to lean towards the possibility of NHI being a cause for these things or something to that effect. So again, I think it's a good balance of people on the list to hopefully, I don't think it's ever going to be, I don't think they're ever going to have a case where if it is truly an unknown, Arrow has classified it as unknown, where they will publicly state this is an HI or this has the potential to be NHI. That will never happen. They're still going to follow the same line as Arrow, I think, and say these are just still unexplainable cases, with the idea or expectation that there is an explanation out there, and likely that explanation is not NHI. However, I think having people like Gary Nolan and others may help to continue to insert that possibility, if you will, into the possible explanations of what these things are. Forming the council is one thing. Potentially will their report be any better than the reports we've received from Aero or NASA? That's yet to be determined.
Is there anybody else on this list? And I'm going to read the names off here quickly. So we have Professor Matthew Sedegas, physicist specializing in, where did his name go there? In instrumentation and detector technology. He's been very well versed in the UFO world for a number of years. Dr. Tim Gallaudet, oceanographer and former acting NOAA administrator and Rear Admiral of the United States Navy, contributing to oceanographic expertise to the council. Dr. Regina Sarmiento, Galileo Project researcher. Avi Loeb, Dr. Janice Villauer, Los Angeles psychologist, developer of future direct therapy, and author of Think Forward to Thrive. We have next Professor Peter Skafish, cultural anthropologist and co-founder of the Soul Foundation with a PhD from UC Berkeley. Dr. Richard Clote, Galileo Project postdoctoral fellow trained at the University of Cambridge, and Dr. Omer Eldadi, specialist combining data management. I mean, this is a lot of smart people here, Josh.
Yeah,
a lot of smart people.
And I'll tell you, in what you read off there, Dr. Omer Eldadi, you didn't mention, he also has a strong interest and background in AI as well as human psychology. So I do think it's interesting that they included a psychologist in the list because, as you and I would agree, the human element is a key aspect of these sightings, whether it be humans that have the sighting, human that investigates the sighting, human and has the experience, if it's more than just a sighting. So having a psychologist there, I think, is important. Again, this would be a however, having a psychologist there that recognizes that sometimes that we as people classify things, or we cast a wide net when we classify things. And so, for example, a lot of psychologists would talk to people who channel and say that they are schizophrenic. But does that, just because someone channels, does that make them a schizophrenic under today's, definition and rationality? Yeah. But again, does that mean that they are in the same line as people who receive messages to harm themselves or to harm others? I don't think so, because those people who channel messages for, the betterment of humanity, etc. So I just think that there's even within the realm of psychology, there is some gray area. And I don't know if Dr. Omer Eldadi is willing to consider that gray. And so that's where I think it'll be interesting to see when they actually start digging into cases, what their first report contains and what is some of the explanations that they provide.
We're going to switch gears once again because the third tranche of UFO files came out exclusively on the same date, Disclosure Day. The movie came out. This third tranche was not very impressive, Josh. And I know a lot of people are upset about the cartoons that we like to call them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what do I mean by cartoons? Instead of giving us videos and photographs, they gave us AI renderings of incidents. Josh, what is your thoughts on this? It was absolutely ridiculous on my thought.
Yeah, it's almost like they've got Michael Schratt working for them. No offense to Michael Schratt, he does some amazing work with renderings, but it's kind of the same thing. It's almost like they sent somebody to a conference or a con and saw Michael Schratt presenting and like, oh, they're eating this stuff up. Well, we got to have renderings. I mean, there was one case, the potato, the potato case. Are you familiar with the potato UFO?
Yes.
Okay. Where they produced the rendering this year, like almost as if it was like in response to, we're going to put these files out. We need a rendering for this thing. So it's the renderings are rather ridiculous. Something I called out. I don't remember if it was on your show or somebody else's, but a lot of the older files, that just the text files from like where people would write in or their own agents and things would report things, make mention of media that was included in what was sent in, pictures from a witness or whatever the case may be, but none of that content is provided. Instead, we get flying potatoes over Google Earth images and things like that. I just don't understand.
There were two brand new videos. One of they were both looked like they were shot from smartphones, and there was a lot of shakiness to them. I actually liked these videos. One was of a purported triangle. The other one was of two reddish orange orbs that were flying through the trees. I mean, to me, these looked real because this is what everyday people like you and me are capturing.
Yeah. The other one that I really like is orbs over the pond. Did you see that from October 2024? This was about 25 miles of the northeastern orb sighting. The footage shows a light source below the horizon hovering above a pond at an estimated 2,700 feet, according to the description in the file. The reason why it's interesting to me is because I went out with Shane Hurd and my friend Stefan in March of 21. And we filmed a very similar looking orb that hovered just above the ground, within, probably about the same distance of us. We filmed it on a Psionics night vision camera, but we also saw it with the naked eye. And the way that the orb that we filmed moves, the way that it kind of looks like it spins and undulates and stuff, is the exact same movement that I see in that video of orbs over the pond. So for me, that release means something because it matches something I've captured as well.
A little bit more on NASA. I think this was a big joke. I was very, very confused about why this would come out. They were talking with astronauts, I believe, from Apollo 14 who are being interviewed. Now, imagine this. Imagine this. Everybody remembers legendary broadcaster and newsman Walter Cronkite. He did an interview with a couple of astronauts, all public. But for some reason, they think that they have to release this as part of the UFO files, this hour-long video or interview. I thought it was ridiculous. I'm like, this can't be serious.
Well, and I think it's because somebody once upon a time probably pulled that video and included it in their files. And like we talked about, maybe when they released the first tranche, it's almost like somebody just did a keyword search across all these databases and anything that had the word unknown or phenomena or space or astronaut or any of those keywords, they pulled it and they reviewed it for public release. So it includes things that have either A, already been released before, or B, were public domain to begin with, but because somebody recorded it, I'm assuming at that stage, probably on their their beta tape, and stored it in the database somewhere, or in a file that was eventually digitized, that it got included in the files. That's why, like I've said before to other people, this is not a purposeful review of available files to be released, where they are looking for what is the this kind of gets back to my whole thing about how do we define disclosure. That if we had specific details that we were looking for, and they were trying to find files that matched up to the list that we had provided, and then release those specific files, that would be a purposeful, thought out attempt at quote unquote disclosure. But what we are getting is a big net cast across a bunch of keywords and a whole bunch of junk that maybe contains 25 to 30% of good, valuable details.
But the American public and the world public, Josh, as we wrap up tonight's show, will only see a Walter Cronkite interview and saying, "Are you kidding me? This is what they're hiding. This is ridiculous." And that's when the public tunes out.
Yep.
And
And
maybe at the end, that is the reason why they did it. Josh Rutledge, the UFO wizard, will be back in a couple of nights' time as we say hello to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, Elga, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on X at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and Bigfoot Broadcasting Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we're watching. We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo Train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night, everybody. Good job there, Wizard.
Thank you, Dave.
Absolutely. We'll see you again on a couple nights' time.
Yep. Thursday evening. I'll be there with bells on.
Yep.
So have a good night.
You too, buddy. I appreciate you filling in tonight. I hate to have my back to you, but I got to quickly type this out.
That's okay. I'm used to it. All right. I'll talk to you all later, and good night's rest. Better day tomorrow.
All right, buddy. Take care. The Wizard, everybody. I will be on air with Walter M. Sterling in just a couple of minutes' time here. Tomorrow night on the show, Melinda Leslie will join us to talk about UFO disclosure, and it'll be a great show for all of you. And big thank you to everybody. I went on with the Blondes and Booze podcast earlier, talking about B. Arthur, and great job by them, and Tex and Jason McLean and Bigfoot Rob. Brian was there. Danielle Diva was there. A lot of people who we knew and loved gathering all together. And I want to give a shout out to them for a great job they did, and a tribute to Brent Thomas. I'm going to miss him. This one hurt. This one hurt as bad as Butch Witkowski. It really did. But thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming on in. We will see you all tomorrow night. Thank you to our super chatters, T-Bone, Claudette, Bigfoot Fadez. I still think it's Fades, but it's apparently that she pronounces it Fadez. Kitty Caddywhack, Erica, and Walter Kotchabinsky. Love you all. I'll see you tomorrow night, everyone. Let me just pick the right video here. Good night.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.